Greeting, blah, 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 blah. Greetings, Battle Brothers. It's me, Aurelia Tempris, defender of the Golden Throne and servant of humanity. Bro, I just ran ads. What the heck? I'm so sorry. I like to run ads with the waiting screen. But why did Twitch add more ads? That's dumb. That's so dumb. How do I sound? Do I sound decent? My YouTube title is wrong. What do you mean it's wrong? They're not the same. That's on purpose. Let me see. Did I name it wrong? No, it's correct. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've been fiddling with my settings. I actually think I figured out, you know, I might just jinx myself here, but I may have actually figured out my scuff issue with my machine. There we go. Yay, good. Good. It's a little bit different. I apologize. I have got some new equipment, and it is well, I was fiddling with it yesterday. So I had to plug everything back in today. So yeah, chipped in, yeah. Yep. I was not happy about it. I'm supposed to get my nails done soon, and I like to grow them out right before I get them done, and this one I broke on Monday. Sad. There you go. Yeah, just the one. This other one's long, but it's fine. It's fine. I'll deal with it. But I'll get my nails done later and it'll be nice. Oh, Pet Fiend, thank you so much for becoming a member on the YouTube side. Welcome in. Welcome in, everyone. Today is going to be a little bit of a different day. We are watching Star Wars versus Warhammer 40k, but I feel like a schmuck every time I sit down and I just watch the videos and I'm quiet and like I have my commentary, but it doesn't feel like enough. So we're gonna try something a little different today. We're gonna try listening to it while we work on. I didn't have any minis prepped that I wanted to work on today, but we're gonna be working on some stuff while we listen. I don't have ADHD, man. I just let me put it in descriptive. Let me explain how this kind of works for me, at least. I used to do my own like hobby projects, and I used to listen to Warhammer books in the background. It actually used to be just like YouTube videos. So I would listen to like YouTube videos or whatever show in the background and it was fine, but then I got into Warhammer and I started listening and reading all the books. So I was always doing something with my hands while listening, and I find it great because I'm multitasking. I get to read and like listen to stuff I love while working on hobbies and things that I love. So that's kind of where I'm at. I can focus and I can pay attention. I just feel it's more like that I'm not getting anything done if I don't do something, if I don't multitask. Peep the Baja Blast. I'm finally having what they call the dirty Baja Blast, which is vanilla soft serve in a Baja Blast. It's not bad. It's not my favorite thing, but it's not bad. Yeah, it's basically a Baja Blast float. That's the simple version. So yeah, that is my explanation as to while we are doing this. Aurelia is going to react to a video while painting minis and talking to chat. Yeah. As if it wasn't enough already. But everyone's pretty cool. I mean, for the most part, everyone is usually really quiet during these streams. We don't chat as much. We mainly watch, which is fine. I've just always kind of felt like bad about reaction content. So doing something a little bit more I like to multitask a bit. It's Fan's birthday today. Is he here? Oh, I hope he's not here. He better not be here. He better not be here. If it's Fan's birthday, then happy birthday to Fan. Why am I gesturing? I'm like, you better have a happy birthday, sir. You better have a happy birthday. I hope he's not on the YouTube side, because he should be going out and celebrating his birthday. Not that you have to celebrate your birthday on the day of, but it is a Friday, and people are more likely to hang out on a Friday night. Have you ever had the new Blackberry Dr. Pepper? Warning, don't drink it after brushing your teeth. Man, I could have told you that. I could have told you don't drink that after brushing your teeth. Any soda, for that matter. One time I brushed my teeth in the morning and I had a Mountain Dew. That's like my version of coffee. And yeah, no, it's not good. You have to wait at least an hour after brushing your teeth. Nah. I haven't had it. It looks interesting, and not interesting in a good way. So, yeah. No, haven't had it. I have had the orange Coke. Orange cream Coke. That was good. That was yummy. But yeah, I have this, and then I'm double fisting. I have the dirty Baja Blast float, and then I got a regular one. Because they have a deal. It's like their happy hour. You get like medium-sized drinks for like $1. So. So I have 2 drinks. Anyways, so I didn't have any miniatures that I really wanted to like work on. I probably should have prepped better, but it's been wild trying to plug everything back into my computer, let me tell you. And getting things set up, but I got gifted this. So here's what it is. This is a book nook. Basically, it's wood, and it's like laser cut, all that stuff. It's fancy. Sorry, the light, that's not helpful. Basically, you put it together, and it's like a little book nook. And I picked one out. Well, I got one for my friend. And she loved it. She absolutely loved it. And I've been like thinking about getting one. I put one up on my throne page on a whim. And I picked the most 40K looking one. So it's, you can't really tell by the picture, but it's very gothic looking. It's got some stained glass cutouts and stuff. So I thought, you know what? Why not? So we're gonna put it together. I don't think it says it'll take anywhere from like 5 to 6 hours. I've seen these on TikTok. They're very dope. Yeah, okay, I've seen ads for them because I love books and I'm a book girly, so, you know, they were bound to get me at some point. they're bound to get me. So yeah, it's supposed to be, let's see, how tall is it? That's when they made it, apparently. Where's the dimensions? It doesn't say. I'm guessing it's anywhere between 6 to 8 inches tall. It doesn't have dimensions on it that I can see easily. Anyways, it looks like fun. But another thing we're gonna do, because we don't do things easy here, we always make it harder. When they cut the wood, so there's a lot of pop outs, we will get this like wood grain on the side. So what we're gonna do is, for certain pieces, we're going to paint it so it kind of like matches as like as much as possible. Yo, Mini Death Knight, hello, thank you for the bits. There you go, you got your button. You got your button. Laurel button. Paint it gold. It depends on what the item is. I think, like, so for bookshelves, like, see this bookshelf here? Well, that's part of the wall, but like if this bookshelf popped out, we'd want to paint the side brown. So we're gonna make it like match. So I'm gonna take it all out of the box. But apparently my friend built hers. It was really relaxing. Also, look, we get to put books together. So this is like the inside pages of like books that we make, little paper books. Look how tiny. Look how tiny and small. It should be fun, I think. This could be the worst thing to try to multitask with. It's got a whole instruction booklet. So this could prove to be interesting. So see, like, there's a piano. Look. So, and I do plan, because there's some, I think in part of this, yeah, here. I'll tell you guys, these are my thoughts. We may not do all of this, because if you see in this picture, there's like a lot of little like paintings that are already on the wall. Or maybe that's some of these over here. We're gonna find out. But what I want to do is I want to print out like little tiny Warhammer pictures. So instead of this just being, oh, this is some rando castle, I'm gonna make it like Warhammer themed. So we might have to go back and change a few things. But I think that will make the whole piece look better. Oh, hello, Sean. Welcome in. I saw you on YouTube and loved your vibe. Well, thank you very much, my guy. I appreciate that. Why not fan art? We could do fan art, too. I was gonna get pictures of Sanguinius. I was gonna get pictures of Sanguinius. That was the plan. So, like how I play games with you in the background. Yes, exactly like that. Sorry, ALJ. It was you, right? Yes, ALJ, exactly like that. Thank you for the super chat. Yeah, we're multitasking. It's gonna be cool. Look at it. We can build parts of it without building some other sections. So, like, we could probably skip this and... Yeah, so that's the plan. Hello there. So this is the vibe. We're gonna see how this goes. I don't know. I've never built one of these. My friend enjoyed it. She took her time on it, so we'll see how quickly this goes, because I'm a girl who likes her Legos. So, oh, grab my scissors. I think you guys can appreciate this. I have, there's a song that's stuck in my head right now. It's not an actual song, it's actually instrumental. Howl's Moving Castle. Whatever that main song is. I think it's like Carousel of Life or something. There's an instrumental, like, orchestral version that is, like, in my head right now, and I'm in love. Speaking of friends, any luck infecting your one friend with the Vtuber virus? No, I'm kind of taking it slow. I want to become better friends with her first. And before I can start doing the infecting, I need to do more work first. I actually haven't seen Howl's Moving Castle. I just know the song. Oh shoot, I just dropped my phone. One sec. Yeah. I haven't seen it, but I want to see it. It's like on my list of movies to watch. Okay. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna try to do this before we start and get everyone kind of warmed up before we get into the stream. There we go. The soundtrack is really good. Man, the soundtrack is so pretty. Yeah, see, like, some of these we're gonna paint. We won't do every single side, but for the ones that, like... I think there's a tool in here that I need to use. Okay. Oh, yeah, so you see right here. This is one of the sides. Actually, yeah, that's gonna be pretty tall. So this is about... Hang on. I'm not really good at gauging small distances. 9 inches. So at minimum 9 inches tall, but I believe it has a peaked roof, so it's going to be about a foot tall. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just not really good with, like, these small measurements here. Like, 9 inches isn't, like, oh, is it 7? Is it 9? Like, it's all small to me. So, yeah, see, I'll probably print something out and just put these underneath, like, really tiny ones. Yeah, I've heard about all of that viral stuff regarding the AI things. I'm like, oh no. Oh, see, these are cool. Okay, yeah, let's look at all these. Hang on. What sounds average? What? I don't know, man. See? Oh, look at this. Look, I picked a cool gothic-y one. You've got these, like, peaked arches. This would be interesting. Some of these are kind of weird. Like, look, we've got skulls. Skulls. And banisters. It's gonna be cool. I'm sorry, I'm just used to Primark dimensions, that's all. Anyways, we'll get started in a minute or two. Let me see. There's probably a piece in here that I used to get all of the, pop all the wood pieces out. Okay. Let's see. Do not put this product near a heat source or immerse in water. Okay. Okay, so this is our little sanding piece. Excuse me, Aurelia. Look, man. Look, man. Okay, let's see. I've got the bags. This I will do later. It does light up, which is nice. That's very cool. You guys took that so well. You guys are good sports. You guys are really good sports. I appreciate that. You guys are so cool about that one. Let's see here. No, I think I just pop it out. I think that's what we do. Okay. Seems straightforward. And then I'm gonna grab really fast before we start. I'm gonna grab some of my acrylic paints. I don't think I need too many like crazy colors. Like it looks like I'll just need like brown, black, and like maybe white to mix for shades. So that's what we'll do. I'm gonna drink more of this before it melts. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I will have my headphones on. I will be listening to all the things. We will do all the stuff. We'll probably build all the items is probably what we'll get done today. And then, like, paint them once they're done. We'll figure it out as we go. We'll figure it out as we go. Okay, I will be right back. I'm going to grab my paints from the other side of the room. And then I will come back. And then we will start Star Wars versus Warhammer. And here's the thing. I will say this. This is a test. If I get 30 minutes into it and I'm like, no, I'm not feeling it. And I want to, like, we might just swap and we might just go back to me just watching it on its own. It is all about how I feel that if I'm effectively reacting to both you guys and the video. Okay, so this could change and we'll switch over if that's the case. Just testing this to see if I like it. Because I could try to do this on my own time, but it's kind of hard to do it without without interacting with you guys, because I know I'm capable of doing this and listening to an audiobook. I can 100% do that, but reacting to you guys is also part of this, and I like talking to you guys. So, we will figure this out together, and yeah. You're the captain, we're just the captive audience? Literally? No. No. What do you mean, literally? I don't what? Yeah, don't mind the guy. Don't mind the man behind the curtain. I just have him tied up. Just cuz. Just cuz. I have no other reason to. I just... Oh my gosh. You're accusing me of things. You can start doing your taxes and we can't stop you. You probably should, because my tax information shouldn't be on a screen. It shouldn't be on the screen anyways. Okay. I'll be right back. Okay. Oh, sorry, I bumped the camera there. Are we ready? How did I end up unfollowing? It's Tzeentch. Tzeentch did it. Tzeentch did it. They didn't want you to follow me because I'm a loyal servant of the Imperium, and the Chaos Gods hate the Emperor and the Imperium. It's 100% his fault. It's Tzeentch. You don't have to say anything else. It was Tzeentch. 100%. Okay. Put the headphones on. Okay. Oof. All right. Let us start. I have the video on the screen here. So you guys can see where we are. Or at least, so you know something is running. Because people are gonna be like, where is this from? So I have it in the corner. Good luck multitasking. I'm capable of it, but it's the fact, can we add the third component, which is you lovely people. You loyal battle brothers. I will pause as we go, so it's not just going to be me building the whole time. We'll chat. We'll chat. Okay? All right, let me adjust the audio. Hopefully my headphones don't make the sound go nuts. Ooh. Okay, we'll wait for a little bit, then we'll see. Yeah, I know it's kind of loud, but I have to adjust his volume. I'm gonna sneeze here in a moment. Oh yes, and please go follow Fan. I think we have his YouTube channel linked. So please go follow him, he's awesome. He's very cool. Dun dun. Saint Lazarus. Oh, that's interesting. What did he do? I mean, he's very good at not dying, which is hilarious.
Sando felt his heart pounding painfully in his chest. He could not move. He could not think. The sheer terror.
Okay, how was that? Was that good for the first, like, 5 seconds? Did we like? Do we like? Because if we like, then we'll go. It's good? Good. Yeah, see, the beginning music is really loud, but then he is quieter by a bit. Anakin is the War Master. Oh, yeah. Oh, wait. Oh, no. You meant the Supreme Commander. You're right. You misspoke. Okay. Figure out how this goes. This will be a time. Alrighty, let's do it.
Of what he had nearly escaped chasing him like a phantom, unimpeded by the now sealed door. He barely had the time to draw in a couple more ragged breaths before he cried out in raw terror, the sudden scream torn out of him by the equally sudden appearance of the Imperial's blade.
Oh.
The glowing length of metal cut into and through the thick material of the door behind him, halting a foot from his face, the heat touching his skin even through his helmet. He rolled back and away as the sword began to slice upwards, beginning to carve a hole for its wielder. The clone hopped to his feet and scrambled down the corridor past the other clones who were setting up to defend the next choke point.
Oi, Sando! Where are you going?
One of the men called to his back, but he did not stop or slow, even as the sounds of other explosions, the heavy, pressurized punch of breaching charges, began to sound off behind him. The blasting started, followed by screaming, and Sando did not need to turn around or slow to know that more than one of the Imperial death machines had broken into their perimeter.
I'm in danger.
The loud, thundering thuds of their explosive weapons quaked the air around him, making it hard not to think about those terrible guns, and how helpless he would be if one sighted down his fleeing back and blew him apart.
Yeah, they're pretty brutal.
He was one bend away from his destination, when a sealed hatch 12 paces in front of him blew open in a sudden spray of sage smoke and gunpowder.
Well,
Sando sped up, charging with all his might, but could not pass before an owl-faced Imperial warrior loomed tall in the broken doorway.
Owl-faced?
The wide lenses of her mechanized helmet burned an intense green, and he could see clearly that she saw him and would reach for him. He leveled the Imperial death laser he still clutched in his arms, and sprayed red lances of light into those green eyes, making the woman scream through the loud speakers in her armor and reel away, thrashing with the mace she held. Sando dared hope that this would be enough, only to be thrown halfway down the hall by the sudden strike of the armored Imperial's flailing power maul.
Dang!
He groaned, stumbled up to his feet, and then fell again, dropping his gun. His left arm felt numbed by the grazing strike, and it was utterly unresponsive now, punishing his attempts to move with electrical jolts of pain. His whole left side felt thrashed, and his armor was cracked and shattered in several places, exposing the black bodysuit underneath. The clone grit his teeth and staggered upright, drawing a blaster pistol he had salvaged during their setup and defense, and continued his egress. Luckily, he found that the blow had tossed him down the way he had been planning to go, and was soon at the room he sought. He slid open the door.
It should be... what is it? I think it's 27? 1 second. Episode... 27. It says 27. Yeah, it's 27. Yeah, episode 27. Yeah, and welcome into all the people who are just joining us today. Listening to a little bit of a, we'll call it, it's like an audiobook while working. You like the popping? You like the popping noises? I should do an ASMR. I have the mic for it, but I'm nervous about doing ASMR. That's the sound of eyeballs exploding. Well. Alright, let me... Oh, hang on. I clicked off the screen with the video. Alright, let's do it. Let's continue.
Almost falling inside the large room where the explosives were being primed. But when he looked up, he found the demo clones splayed out across the ground, their limbs and bodies shattered like broken toys.
Rip.
And standing over the ruin of his men stood 5 towering women, all garbed in the same encompassing armor as the ones killing his men even now. They met his gaze and crouched milliseconds away from a forward lunge when Sando snapped out his blaster. He managed to fire just faster than they could leap, his bolt sailing past them and into the demo charges which were heaped against the wall. The resulting explosion threw the clone back, tearing his gun out of his hands and ripping him away from the world of the waking for several moments. When he came to himself, he found that he could hear nothing and see little. Gray, wispy dust fell all around him, and he found himself half buried in detritus. He scrunched his sweat-laden face tightly as a terrible aching poured over him, molten and fresh. His entire body, particularly his left arm, was ringing like a painful dirge, making his attempts to rise blindingly agonizing.
He's gonna have a hard
not
time
that there
with that.
was much to see in the gray mire which surrounded
He's not
him.
gonna last.
He somehow found his feet, and not a moment too soon, as he saw but could not hear the shifting nearby piles of metal debris. Out from them rose the armored form of the Imperials, still alive in spite of everything, and the sight of them kicked Sando back into alertness.
I'm sorry, man.
He struggled
you're
and
toast.
stumbled as he made his way past their reorienting forms, limping out of the dust and grit which hung around him. There was a loud, horrible ringing in his ears, like a metallic ping, which never ended or lost strength. Sando tried to ignore it as he made his way over the wreckage of the room, angling for where he knew the hole in the wall must be. But the ringing only grew louder and louder, developing into a chaotic cacophony of familiar noises which his scattered thoughts simply could not place in the panic of the moment.
The phone is ringing.
However, one of the noises was growing louder and louder than the others. A high-pitched, continuous whistling which made Sando pause his escape attempt. He knew that noise and collapsed down to his knees the moment he recognized it for what it was.
Is it a grenade?
Whistling of falling mortar shells.
Oh.
The munitions impacted ahead of him in a volley of overlapping explosions, the shockwaves from it blowing away the thick dust and spraying the prone clone with wind and rain. The battlefield was revealed to him, the lip of the breach which led outside only 2 feet from where he crouched. Before him was the cracked but still intact bunker dome of the holdout they had been sent to clear. The prefabricated structure smoking and damaged from all the various weapons fire it had already absorbed. Yet, its sturdy construction remained in more or less one piece.
Oops, I just broke
and
that.
the Imperials within continued to lay down heavy lines of fire from the slits and gun ports which, to Sando's relief, faced away from the building and down towards the avenue they overlooked. From down there and other structures across from them, the Vanguard forces were engaging the bunker and other Imperial forces which supported it. Casualties on both sides continued to mount without progress, at what was fast becoming a bottleneck, one which the entire main column would soon be forced into. But thoughts of the main column and the plight of the other clones were lost on Sando, who cursed through bruised lips and began crawling forward. He heard the crunching and stomping of the Imperials behind him, as they pulled themselves from the rubble and began to walk after him. His heart was beating in his throat, but a cold reality began to settle over him as he reached the back of the prefabricated bunker. He had nowhere to run and couldn't even if he
He's gonna
did.
take out as many as he can.
Leaning
He's gonna
against
do
the
Imperium
cracked,
stuff.
smoking wall, he
And he's
turned
out.
himself around just as the menacing shapes of the warrior women of the Imperium came into full
There we
focus
go.
past the
Kinda
blankets
loud.
of
My bad.
rain, eyes glowing in the torrents of wind and water. One put aside her odd and overly powerful slug thrower, drawing a straight, massive combat knife to finish him off.
Oof.
Sitting against the wall of their bunker, Sando understood the logic behind choosing a weapon which would not risk damaging their own structure further. But angled as he was, he could see something else as well. Above the battle sister and the weapon she raised high to end his life.
No, you just go
The
for a quick
blade
stab.
shattered under the pressure of a sudden blue bolt of energy. The sisters present wheeled about, shielding their lenses from the sudden rain of blaster fire which began to fall onto them. The roof access teams had begun to rappel down, their descent led by the venerated commandos of Delta Squad. There,
Man,
Sando felt a
he got
burgeoning hope
lucky.
building inside of him as he watched two of the battle sisters fall onto the ground in writhing heaps and a third stagger. He had seen it all. The first sister to fall had taken 2 blaster shots into the face.
Ooh.
One into each eye, courtesy of a red-painted commando wielding a
That's
sniper
rough.
blaster. She now screamed through the speakers on her helmet, clawing like
Yep.
an animal at her eyes and helmet seals as she kicked and flailed.
Oh, yeah,
The
that's
second
rough.
was also struggling on the ground as well, but not in pain, though her evident frustration was
she
hardly
did.
the lesser of the two. It was with her and the third that Sando came to understand a weakness he had not known or seen before. Their joints. The creases in their armor where mobility was required were vulnerable to the heated plasma and charged ions of their blaster rifles.
Yeah, it's not.
The second fallen sister and the third, which had been staggered, struggled against the weight of their own armor as they tried to react to the oncoming rush of clones. But their armors were not recovering quickly enough, and the hardened plates began to crack and warp under the persistent firepower of the many clone troopers. The 2 other women were quick to respond, screaming chants born on words of frenzy over their helmet speakers, laying into the exposed clones with their explosive firearms, aiming into the center of their mass to maximize how many would be struck by each lethal blast. He watched them sway and shift subtly, holding themselves in order to minimize the exposure of their black, vulnerable undersuits. Even so, though the clones were exposed and without cover, they were also arranged so that all of their considerable number could fire down into the Imperials as one, and the results took meager seconds to resolve. The Sisters of Battle fell as the
Dang
clone
it.
commandos touched down,
Dang it.
screaming
They're
for
so-
mercifully brief lengths of time as they were, one and all, rapidly cooked to death inside their own suits.
Oh, lovely.
Not one retreated, not one even attempted to escape their fate.
Based.
And
They're doing their job.
saw it all. The leader of Delta Squad, a clone named Boss, came to
'Cause
Sando and
Even if they die, they are still doing a lot. They're causing psychological damage. They cause psychological damage when people see them die. So good for them. Good for them.
hauled him up to his feet by his good arm. A clone in green paint named Fixer, quickly beginning to administer him Bacta via an advanced dispersal unit. He took a deep breath and took off his helmet, smiling as the rain poured over him
You would
and
take it
washed
off
his
after-
face clean.
Wait. I'm sorry, but the smell of the bodies. Man, that's gonna smell.
Even as this went on, a clone in yellow paint by the name of Scorch began to strap charges to the wall Sando had been leaning on, humming happily as he did.
Come on.
Said Boss. Sando blinked, mind spinning, feeling both fast and slow. He did not respond, but stumbled after Boss as he was pulled away.
Hey, come on. Snip out of a trooper.
the clone commando said, hauling more urgently as he took Sando back into the building where most of the roof access teams were now taking shelter. The clone who was pulling along didn't seem to understand. Sando was still just processing the fact that he was alive and standing, still here, still part of the world around him. And the rush and then calm from that sudden Bacta infusion made everything feel
I might be used to the smell.
surreal.
That doesn't mean he is, though.
His heart felt odd in his chest. His skin was both cold and warm in distressing alternation.
Boss, he's not taking the infusion well. He might be going into shock.
Said the green clone from somewhere.
Oh,
What?
Said the one called Boss, before he took either side of his own helmet and pulled it from his head, the seals hissing in protest as he did.
Hey, look at me. Here, look at me. Breathe, brother. Slowly. Breathe.
He said to Sando. They were behind something now, the lip of a broken wall, rubble crunching beneath them as they and many other clones kneeled and hid from the blast they expected to come. Sando realized for the first time that he was hyperventilating and nodded numbly to Boss, trying to slow his breathing, recalling his training. 4 seconds, breathe. 4 seconds, hold. 4 seconds, release. 4 seconds, hold. 4 seconds, breathe.
What's your name?
Boss asked.
I wonder if he did research to find that out.
Sando.
Like
Sando
just a
told him
breathing
through
pattern.
trembling lips.
Good. Tell me, Sando. Why they call you that?
Boss asked, helping center the clone. Sando could feel the feeling returning to his limbs, could feel the trembling he had not noticed receding. His mind began to work again, given something distinct to do, given questions he could answer.
Charges set and ready. Let me know when, boss.
Called the yellow-painted clone.
Blow him on a 3 count.
Boss yelled back.
Blow him.
The yellow
Blow 'em,
clone
boys.
saluted and began to loudly and slowly count down as Sando began to answer.
It's from a saying. We heard it from Naboo.
The explosion detonated, a ball of fiery light ripping open the back of the Imperial hardpoint with a thundering roar. Its concussive force distorted the rain around it, and the sudden light illuminated even the deepest shadows. And it was in that sudden illumination that Sando saw the shape of his terror. He grabbed Boss's sidearm, and the clone commando, blaster in one hand, helmet in the other, was unable to stop him. But Sando had not gone mad, and his purpose was revealed almost as quickly as the shots he snapped off.
It's because he saw
The
something.
clones spun to face him and the object of his aggression, raising rifles as the tall form of another Imperial stalked out into the open, now dark hallway. She was shrouded in incense smoke, which poured like fountain waters from 2 floating censer skulls which hung suspended above her shoulders. The fearsome woman's armor was far more defined and ornate than that of the sisters the clones had
Sister
already
Superior.
defeated, and was evidently far more powerful. The eye lenses of her helmet were smoking from the shots that Sando had put into them, and yet her armored face remained totally unharmed.
Dang,
She
that's a good
crushed
shot on
rubble
his part.
underfoot, grinding it to dust as she came closer. A halo of ominous light beginning to appear from over her ceramite shoulders. Sando could clearly see the emerald glow of many, many more eye lenses from many, many other sisters, following the wake of the first, shrouding the smoke-cloaked saint in an unholy green light. And with an ululating battle cry which trembled the steel around them, they poured out of the mouth of the hallway like flames from the jaws of a maddened dragon. And the clones began to burn.
Oh, that's rough. That's so rough.
The Senate had come to its decision mere minutes before the news of the Second Battle of Axum reached the Republic capital.
Why did I think the Senate had reached the conclusion before the second, and then my brain I think enough of you probably know what my brain immediately thought of. The second what? The second what? Don't worry about it.
World. The mere shock of it threatened to toss the entire legislative body of the Republic back into session. But this, Palpatine could not allow. While his proxies and puppets stalled the reeling senators, he sent his orders to the Republic fleet through channels and sources he knew would be receptive to not only his own vast authority, but the message he bore with it. Technically, he could no longer issue orders of such magnitude unilaterally, as he was no longer the, strictly speaking, Supreme Chancellor of the Republic, though he still held the title. Thanks to the workings of the Senate, Palpatine was now required to coordinate and agree with their newly designated Supreme Commander. A man who, at this very moment, was not even present on the world in question. And so he had sent them the only order he could issue that would be respected by most who saw it. Your Supreme Commander is fighting for his life on the planet of Axum. Go to him! Recover him and inform him of his new position, before we are forced to choose his replacement. The old Sith had sent. As a result, the Republic fleet was assembling even as the first of the motions to reconvene were received. With that taking place, the Supreme Chancellor had reduced the effort and political capital required to dismiss those motions to a trivial sum. Yet, even so, he went even farther. He would not just deny these motions, but make a physical statement and rally his Republic with a proper showing of force. He stood before a thick set of transparent steel windows and watched as the sky above and around the rising deck of his vessel became crowded with the silver and gray wedges of his gathering armada. Like gripless blades, the titanic dagger-like ships rose in masses which cast deep, jagged shadows across the silver surface of Coruscant.
Maybe this guy just
the
should
mass
have
of their martial
an
numbers,
army.
compounded by the titanic forms
His
of Republic
own
Station tugs,
army. It's just
each
vibing.
tailed by the even larger, bristling masses of the Golan defense platforms they were pulling into orbit.
Okay.
And around it all was the distant metallic haze of thousands upon thousands of fighters, bombers, boarding craft, crew carriers, and other, smaller support craft, moving between vessels and the surface of the planet like a frenzied cloud of countless irregular insects. The Supreme Chancellor stood aboard the bridge of his newly designated flagship, formerly known as the Glory of Coruscant before its extensive refits. Sidious had seen fit to give the ship a new name once it had emerged from the rings of Kuat and became his own. The Prosecutor sounded like a far more apt title.
He's leading into the 40k names. He's like, I mean, the first name was also very 40k. I won't deny it. It also was very like that was also a vibe, but like the Prosecutor. Goodness, that is a 40k name if I've ever heard one. Yeah, just the Prosecutor, dude. Okay. I just thought it was funny. I was like, wow. There must be some Imperial spy that's like, bro, you should name your ship this. It's a cool name. Don't get me wrong. I'm not making fun of the name. I like the name. I just think it's hilarious that he's like, what am I going to name my new ship? How do I prove to everyone that I'm like not evil? Like clearly that I'm clearly a good guy and I'm definitely not evil or sus in any way. And he's like, yes. The Prosecutor. That is what I will call my ship. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Couldn't have done it better myself, sir.
By his own judgment, especially given his plans for the vessel. It was joined alongside her sister ships, the Call of Kuat and the Treasure of the Core. And the 3 massive vessels were further bolstered by the previously concealed strength of the Victory Fleet.
The
Fully
Victory
staffed
Fleet!
and armed, loyal only to Sidious, and armed with the new, more warlike Victory-class
How has no one
Star
noticed
Destroyers.
that this guy's
the
got...
Victory Fleet, impressive though it was, formed only the tip of the spear, with various elements of the recalled sector fleets composing the rest of the Republic's massed armada. With this force, he would go to Axum and finally begin making progress after the setbacks forced onto his plan by these cursed new outsiders.
Good luck.
And
Anakin
more
has a
than
new
that,
master already.
If his visions and premonitions proved true, then his departure would accomplish far more than what would be possible to perform at the location they would arrive at. Just the thought of the possibilities brought a hideous grin to his face.
You mean a Sidious
Supreme
grin?
Chancellor, said the subtle
Or
voice
insidious
of Sly
grin.
Moore. Palpatine did not turn right away, languishing within the glory of his power, feeling each ship, each clone, each war machine, as meeker men might feel their own hands and feet. And this was nothing, only his nascent power. The Umbarn awaited her master's whim, and after a long enough time, he gave it. Proceed, he said without turning. I have news for you, Supreme Chancellor. News that you intend to follow the fleet action to Axum has been leaked, as per your orders. The reactions are as expected, but the result will be determined, as you know, by the success of our actions on the field. And as you predicted, none of the Greater Senate have volunteered to do the same. All are choosing to remain on Coruscant. She said, And Senator Amidala?
She's giving birth right now.
She has vanished. We currently do not know her whereabouts, she said.
I feel like he would
smile lengthened.
very in tune with that.
Is that all, Moore? No, there is one other thing. The tactician we were promised has arrived, she said. And is the Prophet plan feasible? Asked the Supreme Chancellor. The pale Umbaran made a subtle gesture with her mostly concealed hand, activating projectors behind Sidious, which brought the plan before him to be inspected in clear, three-dimensional representation. The Dark Lord of the Galactic Republic slowly turned around, Sly Moore and most of the others on the bridge kneeling as he turned his regard, first to them and then to the plans. As his eyes scanned them, Sly began to speak from...
See, look at this. Look at this. This is much improved, because it was gonna have, like, all these weird, like, wood pieces. And, like, you could tell the color is different, but it's, like, not so different where you're like, oh my gosh, it looks terrible. This actually looks a lot better because it's all, like, one consistent color. Or at least that's my opinion. Is it quiet now? Is the audio quiet? Am I using contrast? No, I'm just using regular acrylic. Okay, I'll turn it up a little bit. It sounds fine to me, but like he clips it at the video at different times. Oh my gosh, Fan! Hi, Fan! Hello! When did you hop in here? You must have just came in here. I heard it was your birthday. Happy birthday! I'm sorry, I've been multitasking. Or working on a little project while I listen. I'm in my element. Happy birthday! I hope you're having a good day. Sorry I hadn't looked over just yet. I'm in the zone. At least I was told it was your birthday. I assume it is. Take a little second here. Let me grab, I need some Kleenex to wipe off some stuff. And yes, I do have the servo skull thing. It's wonderful. It's fantastic. It's the best little palette you've ever seen. I got it. It was gifted to me. So I can't take credit for buying it myself. Yay! It is your birthday. Happy birthday. I hope you're having a good day. And I hope you are going to go celebrate with family and or friends this weekend. I hope it'll be nice. We are enjoying your works. It makes me think of like audiobooks that I used to listen to while I worked on my crafting project, so I decided to give it a shot. Because my hands yearn to itch and do things while I listen to this sort of content. So, yeah. Well, happy birthday. We are listening and we are enjoying ourselves. Is it a little quiet? I think I turned it up. I'll have to look over every time the scene changes. Let's see.
Her kneeling position.
Oh, it is quieter. Wow.
According to the Kaminoans, the clone crews will be able to comply with these new, advanced maneuvers.
This should be
eager
better.
to display the proficiency of their newest batches. Additionally, while they are somewhat uncertain about the performance of the new Victory class, they have guaranteed the technical capacity behind the acclimators and venators will be more than enough to meet the plan's demands. Palpatine felt his smile firming, cutting across his face. Good. I am pleased, most pleased, said the Sith Lord. His eyes gleamed on the darkened bridge, alight with the wraith blue light of the projectors and the deadly designs contained within. It was a beautiful plan, a scheme of simple, ruthless genius, and, just like the tactician who had brought it forth, it now belonged to him. It was time he properly revealed some aspect of his power to these arrogant outsiders, and teach them once more to fear the unknown.
This is gonna be interesting. Fear to the Astartes? Oh, this is so bad. Anakin. Start panicking. I don't have a planikin.
We are nearly there. It will be around this corner and likely guarded.
The Marine whispered as they crept down the way. How heavily guarded do you expect it to be? Anakin asked back, stalking the large, armless man's shadow, saber drawn, but deactivated. The Marine grinned. It would not be enough. Not now.
This prison, as you call it, has only 8 cells and is largely a secret to the entire ship. This hidden facility and its adjoining structures are the personal pet project of an Inquisitor, a powerful lord of the Imperium by the name of Wilder. Due to the nature
I didn't catch his name.
His constraints and secrecy,
something.
the facility is necessarily small, and thus less secure than they like.
Kaon said as he crept low, coming to kneel beside the bend in the hallway. Anakin nodded, remembering the encounter that had led him down here in the first place. Coming down behind the renegade, the Jedi edged to his right until he could also peek around the corner. He spoke as he did. The imps did seem anxious about you when I first met them, and couldn't wait to execute you, in fact, Anakin said. The Marine almost chuckled at that, but suppressed his reaction. A moment later, Anakin was able to see why, as he caught sight of the defenses which barred their path. 2 massive steel doors at the end of a narrow corridor, which started wide after the bend and then became smaller and tighter the closer they came to the doors. The space on the sloping walls was not left vacant either.
My brain? Tar Weiler. It's that Inquisitor. Not him. Not the creepy guy. He makes me so uncomfy. He makes me so uncomfortable. I don't like that guy. Ew. Okay, yeah, you guys can kill him. It's fine. You have my permission. I know. I know you were waiting for me to give that permission, but yeah, you have it. Feel free. Go ahead and Go ahead and kill that guy, please. I'll pay you to kill him. I'll pay you, man. He's gross. He's a weirdo. He's a weird man. Okay, we're gonna need to paint these pieces on the insides. That weird guy, I hate him. And thank you, Dino Fan, for the for the bits. My bad. I hate that guy.
Several servitors built into them and the ceiling, each one grotesquely fused.
He's not weird because he's a shark guy. He's weird just because he's a creep. He's a creep. He's a creep. No, it's not because he has shark teeth. It's because he's just, I mean, it doesn't help him. Doesn't help him. Ugh.
With a large weapon emplacement, their dead, bloodshot eyes scanning for targets. They were arrayed to have clear firing lines past each other, a task made infinitely easier by the narrow...
Not all the Inquisitors are creeps, no. No, they're not all creeps. Eisenhorn's not a creep. I don't like him. I listened to his first book and I was like, oh, I like him. I like him. They're not all creeps. And I know you said a lot of them, and true, not a lot of them. But I mean, he's cool. He's a homie. He's chill. Alright, we'll continue. Sorry.
Of the walls they were built into.
I know he's not
Lastly,
here, but I want him to
two
be here.
masked women,
so they can
not
kill him.
unlike the ones who had escorted him down here, stood sentinel before the doors, each one hefting a shield in one hand and sparking power maul in the other.
I can hear 7 servitor turrets built into the walls.
7?
Kaon said.
He can hear that.
Close. 9, actually, with some really, really big guns. Anakin corrected.
9. It would be 9. Okay, Skywalker.
That was
Do
a
the
test.
turrets look integrated, linked in with each other?
The Marine asked. Anakin squinted down the hallway at them, trying to make sense of their grim construction. I'm not sure. How would I tell? Anakin asked him.
Look at the way they are scanning and moving. They should be able to coordinate their overwatch targeting around each other without a cease in movement. It's, how would I explain it? It's in the barrels of the guns. They won't ever endanger each other with crossfire.
Oh, that's a good way to explain
Anakin
it.
focused his eyes on those details, watching the black-armored droid men jutting from the stone walls, each mounted like a grisly display left out by some horror-vid hive of monsters. In spite of his revulsion, he did manage to notice what Kaon was speaking about, soon noting the unceasing pattern he had described and how it never endangered the other turrets.
That's kind of cool.
I see it now. Yes, they appear to be integrated. I guess that means we won't be able to fool them into cross-firing on each other. Anakin said at length, Kaon responding with a soft, mirthless huff.
True. Integration in that way is normally a good thing, especially within the shroud of their anti-psyker morass. Our minds would be unable to touch their primitive, unprotected demi-thoughts. But that shroud is not so thick as it was.
Kaon elucidated.
Oh,
Do you think you could
He's like,
lift
"Oh."
it? Now that I've reversed the polarity on those rods, you should be able to... Anakin started.
I can, but it's a strange power that I'm using now. These amplifiers will work for us, but I'm uncertain for how long.
Kaon admitted. Are you afraid they will switch back? Anakin asked, barely able
This
to
is so
smother the
horrible.
dismay
I
in
hate
his
this.
voice. Changing each of the rods into an amplifier had left him feeling completely drained, and he was less than certain he could even attempt that kind of thing twice. But Kaon shook his head.
No, not at all. I am actually wary of the opposite. When I
That's too
push
powerful?
against the anti-psyker veil, it puts a lot of strain on me. Normally, I could bear it easily and heal later. But I am in a less than pristine state. I am not sure how long my body can withstand these forces.
Said the Chaos Space Marine.
Yeah, because he's missing a lot of limbs.
In other words, Anakin began to say, you're not afraid that they will shut you down. You are afraid that they will burn you up, said Anakin. Kaon chafed at the wording, but nodded.
I fear nothing.
Ooh,
But
yeah.
yes, that is more or less the gist of my concern. I will need to create a space again when we find my weapons. And it is for that task that I must conserve my strength. The longer I am strained here,
He led. The less chance we will be successful where it counts. Anakin concluded.
precisely.
Interesting.
Said Kaon.
Huh.
All right, then I'll do it, said Anakin.
What?
Asked
Bro,
Kaon.
He's so burnt out
I'll
already.
lift it myself, Anakin asserted.
Bro.
How?
Kaon asked, already knowing the answer. In response, Anakin reached up and took hold of one of Kaon's shoulder-mounted black stone rods. Like this. If these rods can amplify your power, they should be able to amplify mine.
Oh,
I'll
this
lift it
terrifying
and
thought.
hold the veil up. If I can do that, do you think you can incapacitate those defenses? Anakin asked. Kaon smiled inwardly.
I know I can. But you
My
will only be
evil
using
plan.
one rod. I have all 12. Whatever the strain to me might be, you will be dealing with worse.
The sorcerer cautioned. Anakin's face
But he
tightened,
wants to see
but
him do it.
just as the Chaos Space Marine had predicted, he did not shrink away from the task. I'm less roughed up than you are. I can take it, said
Kaon
the Jedi
is so
General.
excited. Holy cow.
Kaon nodded, feigning reluctance. The Jedi had no idea what he was about to attempt, and soon he would expend all of his strength and force the sorcerer to take over him. Once that was done, they would be connected through the black stone rod, and Kaon would do what he needed to do. He would depart his ruined
gosh.
flesh and begin anew within the stolen body of this good-natured fool. It was a sour thing for Kaon to reward trust and alliance with treachery, but it was a far more sour thing to
Oh my
remain within
gosh.
the husk he had been reduced to, while
Dude.
under the tender care of his Imperium.
Wait a second. Oh no. Okay, bro. I hope Anakin is strong enough, but this is really bad. This is really bad. I was like, oh no, it's bad that he's teaming up with this guy. But no, it can get worse. It can get so much worse. Oh no. I really hope Anakin can lock in here. Hippity hoppity, your body is now my property. No, that's so bad. No. That's so messed up. No, man. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. Oh my gosh, that's so bad. Oh my gosh. Okay, we're gonna I'm gonna put these in really fast. Oh my gosh, this is bad. This is bad. Gents, this is bad.
Imperial hosts. Ever since the moment he had felt Anakin manipulate the Blackstone, he'd known there could be no other way. Already the Jedi was flagging in his strength, and Kaon had no doubt that the man would feel pain once the moment was upon them.
I will honor his struggle. I will do what I can to forewarn his doomed republic.
He decided. He would do that much, at least.
Are you ready?
Kaon asked.
This is terrible. This is
Anakin
bad.
nodded. Should I try to build up to it, or give it all I have all at once? He asked. Kaon thought for a moment.
Give it everything you have. You will need at least that much to lift the veil. Sustain that effort for as long as you can.
Oh gosh,
It
the
shall
manipulation.
not take long for me to finish the work.
Said the sorcerer.
Well,
Jedi Masters Mace Windu and Jar Tapal braced as the now desperate Imperial charged in towards them like a speeder truck. Armor sparking around his disabled arm as the Marine whipped his empowered stave around his body, timing its rotation to the strike he would no doubt seek to deliver. The two masters extended their hands to seize him again, but this time with the librarian being aware of the two, the tactic did not work so well. Instead, their minds and wills met his own, cast out into the void between them in anticipation of this tactic. A brief mind war followed, Jaro and Mace's faces constricting in sudden, intense effort, time slowing and nearly stopping as the speed of bodies was replaced by the speed of thought. Their wills collided, and right away the Jedi moved to subdue the Imperial together. But the effort was for naught, for while two minds were ostensibly better than one, the brain they were attempting to grasp was lined with razors. Mace reached in for the thoughts of the attacking Marine and found himself in sudden quiet. 3 suns burning in an orange sky above him.
yeah.
All around him rose pillars of stone, reaching like buried fingers out from the sand around him. He was within an ancient half-buried arena.
Yeah!
And he was bleeding. All the children corralled here were bleeding. They looked up at him, hollow eyes, hatred in every one.
He's gonna get the.
His hands hurt. They hurt horribly, a feeling echoed in many parts of his body. But he was hurting everywhere else because he had been struck everywhere else. His hands, however, did not hurt from being struck. They hurt from doing the striking. And the victims of it lay, breathless, strengthless, hateful, and afraid, all around him.
Well done, boy.
Said a voice that was like thunder. A shadow stood over him, tall as a mountain, with glowing red eyes. An angel of death. It reached down, this
Flashbacks.
thing of impossible size, shrinking itself,
You
so
thought
that it
being a
could
Jedi
place
was rough?
something hard and warm in his blood, dirt-caked hands. A sun-baked blade, a bloody razor.
Now, finish it and be chosen. Cut your earthly bonds and ascend in the Emperor's name.
The mountainous angel commanded. The boy's hands were trembling, shaking, but then there was a sting on his neck, the bite of a needle from behind, and his sore muscles stilled. His pain receded somewhat, and his strength returned. He turned his eyes down, looking away from the angel and instead casting his sight upon the pathetic, dirty children all around him. In the past few months of training, they had become everything to him, and he had become one of them.
That's
An
rough.
aspirant, a challenger, a destined child. They had struggled, starved, and worked together, completing challenges, overcoming other groups. And finally, arriving here, at this place. Here, he and his family of a dozen had been forced to fight, bare-handed, until only one could stand. And that one, the anointed one, was he.
A warrior of the Emperor has no family but our Heavenly Father and others who are chosen. They are not
Dude.
chosen.
The Titanic Marine told the boy.
You
Man.
cannot ascend as long as they chain you here.
The boy who would be Saffron, the boy that was Mace Windu, nodded up at the Angel of Death. He raised the stained blade in both hands, letting it split the sun with its shadow. A shadow blacker than anything he'd ever seen, blacker than any sleep he'd ever had. And without further words, the boy began to cut.
Ooh. Rough. That's so rough.
Major Lazarus squinted his good eye as the hatch opened and took in the moist air. He felt like death itself, and not in a good way. Every single cell in his body was
In what
sick,
way would it be
adjusting
good?
less than well to the plethora of hastily applied cybernetics, drugs, and stimulants which had been used to keep him going. He'd been grateful for the time he'd been given to rest while with the Calambian Eagles, but his time with the Scions had ended abruptly, and before he'd even been able to properly thank them, they were gone, off to another objective. The rain he stepped into was starting to abate, but that still left his troops dripping and soaked to the bone. They stood before him, assembled in ranks, or as close to ranks as they could manage. Decimated, but victorious and alive, though only barely. Cadians, Calambians, Kriegers, Vestellans, Tech Priests, Abhumans, and the shards of what remained from those regiments that had been sent to aid Lazarus stood intermingled, grouped where they could do so easily, but otherwise unable to find the energy for the effort. He saw a one-armed Calambian sniper slumping under the weight of his
Grim Reaper on
tall,
their battlefield
pristine
would be
sniper
good.
rifle. He
Very
saw a
powerful
young,
then.
unmasked Krieger leaning against a Cadian woman, her worn, dirty face streaked
It's
by
the
bloody
boy.
black hair. He saw a
It's the
trio of
boy.
enormous Bulgrins, all bleeding from wounds of various sizes, yet concerned only for the figure the three held between them. The massive men were all weeping silently, trying to stifle their sorrows as they cradled the mangled body of their commissar. The dead man seeming childlike in their massive hands. The sight of them, all of them, straightened Lazarus' spine and hardened what failing metal the man had left. He had no right to stand
Sadness.
before them with a slouch. No right at all. At his side was the sister of battle who had accompanied the penitent engine, the least scathed of them all, yet bearing her own notable damage, most of which she had sustained during the descent from the park. He knew not if she felt the same way he did, or simply had enough faith and vitality contained in her armor to hold her up even now. But she strode with a surety and purpose which made it seem as though, to her, nothing was amiss. He wished he could have that faith, as he stood before his soldiers and snapped around to face their same direction, waiting. They stood inside the smoking walls of the basilica, at last returned from whence their mission began. In spite of this, Lazarus had the creeping suspicion that their work was far from done. Still, he closed his eyes as much as he could and listened. While the sound of distant battle marred the air from afar, there were noises which were blessedly absent from the cacophony. No more artillery fire fell on the base, and that, he knew, was because of them. His eyes
Yeah, they
snapped
did a good job.
open as the large gates before them creaked and swung wide, watching as the commissar captain stepped through, surrounded by a large cadre of guards and the buzzing crowd of his war staff. The unofficial major swallowed hard as he watched the red and black-garbed man approach, an air of authority whirling about him, akin to a tyrannical storm which he wore like a vestment of his office. If Lazarus could have stood any straighter, he would have. Sergeant Lazarus, Commissar Shadrick said as...
You but yes, he got promoted and is not technically official, but you're really gonna drop a sergeant on him? I'm disappointed.
He approached. Lazarus snapped a proper salute, nearly averting his eyes as they met the hard spheres of his superior. Already the man had made a point of re-establishing Lazarus' standard rank, something which both terrified and relieved the man.
Buttface.
Yes, sir, he said. I've received a briefing on what happened. You will be debriefed at a later date and receive your punitive hearing afterward, the Commissar said. Yes, sir, Lazarus responded.
The hearing? Why is he need a hearing?
There was no other answer to give. Punitive hearing? Asked the sister standing beside Lazarus.
Yeah.
Why would he be subject to such a thing? We accomplished our objective, as you can see. We can stand here and converse in the open only because of his efforts.
Yeah,
she added.
You tell him.
The Commissar glared down his nose at the woman, but did not respond to her, instead continuing. Captain Velix will take command from here. For the time being, you are to return to your squad and resume your sanctioned duties. The Commissar looked to his left and waved forward a prim female officer from his cadre, who saluted and then took her place beside Lazarus, effectively replacing him as she saluted. A plethora of bizarre emotions wormed through the Colombian man in those moments, and he faltered, remaining stiff in response. Is that clear, Sergeant? Shadrick asked a moment later. Sir, yes, sir! Lazarus snapped off, though before he could turn to do as ordered, the sister beside him interjected again. Are you hard of hearing, Commissar? I am certainly hard on those who make me repeat myself, she said.
Tell him,
At this, the Commissar did turn to regard the woman, eyes narrowing in his thin, sharp skull. And you are? He asked.
Bro.
Sister Superior and Legatine Novitiate, Lorraine Zara Syed, she said.
You tell him who you are.
Lazarus felt his eye bulge in his skull. A Legatine Novitiate! He had snapped orders at a Legatine Novitiate? His subtle desire to step back into his old rank and vanish into the guard tripled in that moment, and he felt a cold corpse sweat start to stain his skin, looking between the fanatic and the Commissar and wondering which one of them would kill him first if he could not make good his getaway. Shadrick raised an eyebrow, affecting a mildly impressed expression at the discovery, while the sister continued to glare through the lenses of her power armor. He acted in a capacity far outside of his rank. It's as simple as that, he said. He acted in accordance with the will of Sister Rajulia, the Sister Superior said. The Sister Palatine does not have the power to enforce her will on the Astra Militarum, the Commissar retorted smoothly. And all of these soldiers are aware of that. There may be unusual clemency granted in light of these equally unusual circumstances, but that will be decided by myself and other officers involved at the hearing, which will take place in the future. Not here, and not now.
Not here.
Here and now, I need these soldiers ready to go to the front. Lazarus felt a pit open in his stomach. To the front. As in...
He's basically being punished for not directly following the orders. There will be no hearing if he's dead.
The front line. He looked back at the soldiers behind him, half already beginning to look horrified as the overheard conversation sank in. That is absurd, said the sister, voicing the dissent within his own thoughts. Major Lazarus and his men have just returned from a taxing mission in which all of their cunning and force was required to attain victory. You cannot reward that by throwing their lives back into the furnace so quickly.
Care.
These soldiers need food. They need rest. Sister Lorraine shifted her grip on the enormous bolter she still held, voicing several curses worth of agitation by the gesture alone. The commissar seemed unimpressed. Sergeant Lazarus and these soldiers need to get back in line and prepare to do their duty. And you, sister, need to get back in your chapel and cease this interference. I don't care if you're the Emperor-blessed Canoness herself. This is my command. These are my soldiers. And my decisions are not up for discussion.
What a butthole.
Be gone from here. We've no more business.
Get out of here.
Lazarus, what are you still doing here? Back in line. Shadrach snapped, his voice never rising past a certain octave. I will not! Major Lazarus, remain where you are! The Sister Superior spat.
Mommy and Daddy are fighting. Mommy and Daddy are fighting. Oh gosh. This is terrible. This feels awful. Oh my goodness, they're fighting.
Lazarus felt his legs jerk, but he remained rooted to the spot, unsure of whom he'd be more terrified to disobey. That, more than anything else, shook the commissar, whose calm face broke into a scowl. His arm hitched up, his hand landing unsubtly on the grip of his own bolt pistol. And the sister audibly scoffed through her helmet. Draw that at your own peril. I am not one of your guardsmen, to be discarded at your leisure. Fire upon me, and it will be the very last thing that you do, Commissar Captain.
He'd fire upon
she
Lazarus
warned, not
for his
even bothering to lift her own weapon. If I choose to open fire on you, I will not do so alone. The commissar shot back, giving a short nod. In response, the cadre of guardsmen around him drew their weapons and sighted the sister down on their scopes.
It's a measuring contest.
This time, a grin cracked across Shadrach's face, though only a subtle one, and the sister did not scoff again, knees bending slightly as she took a half-step back, weapons still aimed down. Then, a distant bell high atop the tower began to toll, and the commissar's face wrinkled into a hideous scowl. Stand down! These men will submit to my will. As I said, I do not care if the Canoness herself attempts to intervene. This is your final warning, Sister Superior. There will not be another, he said. I will not stand down. These men deserve better, all of them, and I'm going to make sure they get better, she growled. Lazarus became aware of another large force entering through the front gates of the basilica not far away, but refocused his attention on the deteriorating situation before him, nerves fraying, standing rigid as a gravestone. The sister's feet groaned softly against the rockcrete floor, and the commissar's hand tightened fully around his weapon, his thumb unclipping it. Then you have chosen to... Commissar Shadrach began to say, the grip tightening on his gun.
Oh.
Commissar, wait! Please, this has risen far out of hand. Lazarus began to interject, but when he was interrupted, it was not with a vocal retort. Faster than even the sister could catch with her auto-sense-assisted helmet, Commissar Captain Shadrach smoothly drew his bolt gun and fired it into Sergeant Lazarus's gut. The bolt struck his carapace armor and was halted, knocking all of the breath out of the man before detonating and shattering the struck plate utterly. Gore and shrapnel sprayed as Lazarus was thrown off his feet and onto his back, eyes blank, staring up without blinking. More weapons were raised, though, to Shadrach's shock and subsequent dismay, it was not the sister's gun which rose first, though it did raise.
It's Lazarus's men. Dude, what a poor play. What a bad play. I knew he was gonna do it. It's so... oh my gosh.
Quickly. Nearly as one, the assorted, haggard soldiers raised their weapons, from the one-armed sniper to the two wounded guardsmen. each leaning on the other, and even the 3 Bulgrins, who understood aimed guns well enough to follow who the enemy was, raised their gigantic shotguns.
Get 'em, boys.
Flat-barreled ripper guns, slick las guns, and countless ballistic weapons yawned before the Commissar and his cadre. Their 30-plus guns suddenly dwarfed by thousands of firearms. A single-armed Cadian medic scrambled forward, working with the aid of another soldier to staunch the bleeding in the former major's chest as the Commissar, Sister Superior, and surrounding warriors were drawn into a brittle standoff. "This is..." Shadrick began to hiss,
The dumbest
only to
thing.
be cut off by the Sister Superior. "Measure your next words very carefully, Commissar," she warned, a divine ceramite statue, the maw of her bolt gun aimed directly at his chest. "Accuse a daughter of the Emperor at your own peril." He grit his teeth, veins pulsing in his head under his tall cap. "You cannot win this," he hissed.
She's got...
"Neither can you," she shot back.
Yeah, I
And
guess they're going down
soon
together.
they were not alone. In only a short time, both forces found themselves surrounded by a third player. New, more numerous weapons raised inwards towards the Commissar, his men, and those opposing them. The Sister Superior was the first to drop her aim back down to the ground. "Lower your weapons!" she called to the army at her back, and hesitantly they did. The Commissar's soldiers looked around nervously, but held still as statues, keeping their aim trained on the initial rebels, fearful of what would happen if they swung to aim their guns at the encircling force. An ocean of steel masks surrounded them, all cast in the face of the Lady Dominica. Metal teeth clenched in perpetual expressions of divine hatred. The women wearing them bore lasguns, autoguns, and many, many hefted lit flamers. Over them, standing taller than their sisters, were the true members of the Adeptus Sororitas, clad in their power armor and shouldering monstrous bolter weapons, and even larger implements of flame and death. Though the hordes of novitiates wore little more than flak armor over sackcloth garments, even they had masks lined in silver and gold. The true sisters bore the colors too, though with the addition of red as well. Blood red, divine gold, and metallic silver, the colors of the divine cohort.
This can't be good.
The colors of the Canoness Superior of the Order of the Emperor's Bride. Shadrick scowled
Good
and
luck,
lowered
my
his
dude.
weapon, his men following suit. If Sister Palatine Rejulia had been a thorn in his side, then the Canoness was a sword poised over him.
He was bluffing. I wondered. He's like, I don't care if the Canoness is involved. And I'm like, what if she did get involved, though? I think you'd still change your tune, man. You would still change your tune. And lo and behold, we were correct.
His head. She revealed herself soon enough, the crowd splitting to show her enthroned form, flanked by her advisors and guarded by her 2 daughters, both legatine legends of their order. They wore their full panoply of war, but not the Canoness herself. Nearly 400 years old, she was a withered figure, wrapped in white robes with gold trim and wearing a serene mask bearing the Emperor's own face, eyes closed, as if asleep, but only barely.
Wow, that's cool.
The elder was seated on an enormous pyramidal palanquin, her body cradled in an audacious throne of solid platinum. Inscribed upon the throne were many words, each artistically rendered into its grand design,
400 is a
formed
very
mostly into the
impressive age.
shapes of bones, skulls, and swords. Faith, duty, honor, law, victory, and wrath.
Yes.
These
That
words,
was hard.
among others, were predominantly displayed on the gargantuan seat, and the symbolism was not lost on Shadrick.
It better not be.
Beneath the throne labored 22 criminals and heretics, most in various stages of robotization, each struggling with all their might to keep the
Wow, okay,
huge
that's impressive,
construct
though.
aloft over their heads. Above them, the throne itself was so large as to dwarf the women sitting within it. The canoness only able to reach and lean upon one handrest at a time. The chair was a symbolic representation of the Emperor's authority, her mask a symbol denoting her as worthy of wielding it. It crushed the
That's
heretical
pretty
and
cool.
the unworthy beneath it, even
Yep.
as it elevated those who embodied its substance.
The
Before it,
symbolism
the
is kinda
soldiers
dope.
of Lazarus' legion began to kneel, one by one, and then 10 by 10. And then, even Shadrick's own men began to kneel, bowing their heads.
Get on your knees. Get on your
Shadrick
knees.
was their
Punk.
commander, but the canoness was, to many present, the heart of their faith in the Imperial Creed. And while the Commissar hated to admit it, her presence was an undeniably staggering one. How could one look so frail, and yet so unbearably powerful? Her advisors fell silent, watching from the sides of the throne as they were brought closer. The twin Legatine sisters walking alongside it, sparking blue power swords drawn, jump packs flaring. Bright orange eyes peered at him from between the seams of the Emperor's closed eyelids, and soon a voice called out to accompany the hidden stare, carried through the air on subtle but powerful audio howlers. "Commissar Shadrick," she said, her voice frail yet sharp, like a crystalline sword. He expected her to question him, to demand an explanation, to seek an understanding. She did not.
She's just gonna tell him to do it.
"Kneel," she ordered. There was no compromise in her voice, no maneuver, no guile. She had just given him an order, and, slowly, Shadrick realized that he
power
dare
play.
not disobey it. Trembling with rage and pacified adrenaline, the man swept his cloak out and kneeled before the palanquin. He expected her next words to come soon after. They did not.
No!
Instead, he heard a sound.
Oh, she's gonna let him just... Oh, that is so brutal. I love it. She's like, you're gonna kneel for as long as I tell you. Oh, that's a power play. Wow.
A sound he did not understand at first, and once he did, it took all his might not to look up and gawk. The sound was the soft, rhythmic tapping of light, old feet slapping against metal, and soon he felt a long, thin shadow fall over him. And Commissar Shadrick knew she had descended her throne and now stood over him.
It's gonna be a bad day for him.
Sweat trickled into his collar, and fear joined the other emotions swimming in his mind. He had been unaware that she could even walk, at least without assistance. Ravaged by age and centuries of battle, he had not heard of her descending her throne in public for decades.
He's so
The
hosed.
novelty of the
He's
act was
so
the
hosed.
truly frightening aspect of it.
He's
What did
hosed.
she intend to do? A withered hand came into view, bejeweled in various rings and items that
Kiss her
seemed
hand.
like rings.
Kiss her hand.
After
Kiss
a pause, he took the hand gently and kissed it. The act forcing onto Shadrick the full realization of how little his military command meant here and now. This was not his castle. It was
No.
hers. And she was not queen of this place. She was empress of it. Her hand pulled away after a moment and fell onto his shoulder. A pressure pressing down on him as the canoness lowered her masked face so she could speak into his ear. "Confess," she whispered.
It gets better and better. It
"Confess,
gets...
and I will be merciful." Shadrick's blood ran cold. What was she speaking of? What did she know?
There it is. There it is. He doesn't know what he's done wrong. And if you don't know what you've done wrong, it either boils down to incompetence. Like, you legitimately just don't understand incompetence, naivety, or the worst part, pride and arrogance. If you don't think you've done anything wrong, and it seems to everyone else that you have, let's make that point clear. It's pride and arrogance that's in your way. The Emperor's Mercenary does not require you to know what you've done wrong. Correct. Correct. Oh, he's so done. It was in this moment. He knew. He effed up. Yes. Are you too proud or simply too stupid? Yep. Yep. Yep.
He dragged in a shuddering, tremulous breath, gathering himself.
Confess.
She knew nothing. If she did, she would not be waiting for a confession. That fact in mind, he looked up, meeting her hidden orange eyes,
No, don't
and
try
lied. I have nothing to confess, Canoness, he said in a low voice.
Say goodbye to your
She
life.
stared at him, neither nodding nor looking away, her eyes fixed on his in a way which made the Commissar regret his decision to meet them. But that contact was broken by the intrusion of a third party. Canoness! The cry came from the ground, from the one-armed Cadian medic who was, even then, attempting to tend to Lazarus. Canoness, I cannot save him! This man saved our lives! He brought the Imperium victory where we could only expect defeat! He deserves to live! She pleaded. The Holy Lady of the Sisters turned her mask to regard Sister Lorraine, and she nodded, speaking a moment after. It is true. Had we air support or artillery, even dedicated reconnaissance, the battle would not have been swayed against us. But when it did, it was Major Lazarus who swayed it back. He acted far above any capacity that could have been expected of him. Rajulia saw the will of the Emperor when she chose him to lead, she said. The elder woman, all wrapped in white, nodded and strode past the Commissar, leaving him forgotten and kneeling in her wake.
Oh,
she knelt down beside the dying form of the sergeant-made major and stroked her hand over his face. No, he was not dying. He was already dead. Can you save him? Asked the medic. His duty is ended, said the Canoness. He has gone to the Emperor's side.
Dang it. Please.
However, she added. She drew back her hands and carefully began to remove her jewelry, taking off each ring carefully and setting it aside upon the ground. Once her hands, old and thin and withered, were bare, she hiked up her sleeves, revealing the ravages of her age in the pale flesh there. Skin once filled with vital muscles was now loose and wrinkled. Calluses hung suspended in her hands, and bones could be seen in the remaining shape that was left to her. Those old hands moved down over the former major's face and chest, moving without a tremble, and with such grace and precision as to remind the watchful that, old as she was, she had been and remained an instrument of the Emperor's wrath. Her thin fingers reached the gore and pooling blood of his stomach, and sank into it, red grime speckled with shards of ceramite frothing forth from the act.
His heart?
And then there was light. A golden radiance filled the air around the Canoness like a floating mantle of starfire, moving in the space around her like a fiery ribbon suspended within water. It wound around her gradually, making its way down into the lifeless man beneath her hands. His body jerked, and Lazarus suddenly found focus in his eyes, gasping and then screaming on the ground, arms and legs twitching wildly. She did not stop,
No
forcing
way.
more of the light into him, slowly removing her red-smeared hands until finally she was clear of his body. And the light ceased to shine.
Oh my gosh.
Like a prisoner released from electrocution, Lazarus fell limp, panting raggedly, confused, yet alive. The soldier beneath them reached out blindly, and she took his large, gloved hand in her own bony fingers, squeezing
Incredible.
his hard enough to get his attention. He gazed up at her masked face in open awe as she began to speak and to stand. Rise again, worthy
Lazarus.
servant of the Emperor.
I know it!
Our Lord and Master will not have you come before his final war on such disgraceful wings. I
knew it. His name is Lazarus. There's connotations. And I was like, there's no way. There's no way he's gonna just like die. Like the name is too perfect for this. Bro. Lazarus Rises, how biblical, right? The name was very intentional. Obviously. Oh, ow. Sorry, I bonked the mic there.
give you back not your life, but your death. I hope it will be better spent this time.
Like
now,
it was his fault the first time.
return to your place, Major. I will have use for you in the defense of my basilica. And then, as if what they had all seen was not enough,
Promoted.
she pulled tight on his arm and helped him rise to his feet. A sight which beggared reality nearly as much as her denial of Lazarus'
'cause
death
she's
had.
so weak.
She then extended
so
a
old.
red hand towards one of her daughters, who came forward quickly, gently taking her mother's arm and supporting the woman. Doing so just in time, the canoness slumping against her as though she had narrowly avoided a collapse.
Well, yeah.
Cheers and prayers began to fill the air then, each one a call of outright mockery in the mind of the humiliated commissar, who still, even then, knelt where he had been placed, his earlier bluff reduced to ashes in his mouth.
Yeah, you're done,
In
buddy.
spite of the new noise, he
You're
could
done.
still make out the canoness's voice, loud and strong just moments before, now sounding haggard and weak. Take me back to my throne. She breathed to her daughter. Yes, mother, said the towering, armored Sister Legatine, aiding her canoness in ascending the steps once more. But as they passed Commissar Shadrick's kneeling form, the holy elder spoke once more. Just loud enough for both her and the Commissar to know he had heard. Commissar, Captain, you are dismissed. Make preparations and leave my basilica at
Dun, dun, dun.
once.
We have always walked this path. From our birth we knew.
Yes, 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 yes. Oh my gosh, that felt so good. Ooh, ooh, it feels so good. Feels so good for he's getting. This makes me happy. Very happy. Like that? Okay. Let the song play? Okay.
Through the lights, I was raised knowing I'd balance faith and might. Not once now have I doubted, and not once have I left your side.
Getting chills.
I feel your strength always by me, guiding my fight. Oh, I am but a voice of the choir, singing a hymn that will decry their heresy. So wash me in fire, let me be the bar, the surging flame that cleanses the world anew. So pause your shaking hands, hold your doubtful thoughts. When faith is placed in something bigger than us, no longer a clock, no one is but.
That's a good song. 1 second. I need to lock in and glue this thing, cause oh well, that just fell. The glue is not very happy with me. Oh, I have 2 very thin points in which to glue. 1 second. Okay. I'm gonna let that sit for a second. Look at it. Look at the little piano. It's a really good song. I'll listen to the rest of it later on my own time. Next one. See, that went by so quickly. That went by so fast. Excuse me, sorry. The Baja Blast got to me, my bad. That was a very unladylike burp there. Yes, we're gonna watch more. It went by so quickly. It's been like 2 hours already. I love this. This is great. I'm liking how this is going. Because I still am hearing and listening to everything. Dude. Yeah, we're gonna watch another one. Yeah. Yeah. I might need to adjust the volume. It's kind of loud at the end. Oh my. It might be loud for a second. Used to Froggy's, a modest burp is nothing. It just slipped out. I wasn't expecting it. Oh, I'll do this later. Bum, baba. I try to be polite on a stream, and I try not to burp. I'm doing well. Volume up more? Well, we'll wait till he talks. Because if he talks, then it might be loud. Or quiet, who knows?
He had nothing left.
See,
and
loud.
From where his strength now came, he could only barely begin to guess.
Loud.
And
I
had
told
no
you.
interest in doing so. All that mattered was that Sando still had more to give. Always more. The clone was limping, feet shuffling as he descended as quickly as he could down the rubble slope, whilst also ensuring his feet remained safely beneath him. Drool dripped past his gritting teeth as he struggled to force himself through the strobing pain he felt coming from a spot on his leg.
Ooh.
About a hand's span from his left knee where he had taken a bad hit. How bad? He did not know yet, but it wasn't bad enough to prevent his incremental retreat, so he questioned nothing else about it. He knew he'd be able to move faster were it not for the commando he was pulling along beside him. But each time he considered dropping the man, he found the thought paired with the idea of laying down and dying himself. For good or for ill, his brother at his side was perhaps the hidden strength he found to carry on, and even if he was not, good soldiers did not abandon their own.
And good soldiers
He clutched
follow
the armored
orders.
forebrace of the commando
What am I
sniper,
making?
which
Oh,
kept
hang
the
on.
man secure and hefted over Sando's shoulder.
While we have a kind of a pseudo break, what I'm making, this is a little book nook. Yeah, let me get this. I got gifted this. I chose a very gothic-y one. I'm gonna make it Warhammer themed. It's a book nook that you can put with all your books. and it looks cute. So it was gifted to me on my throne page, and I decided to build it because it's a little different. But I'm taking extra time and like painting all the pieces so it looks nicer, because before this would have just been like pieces of like brown, but now it's like all one shade. I might paint over it again. Like I gotta get this bottom piece. So that's the plan.
Shoulder, while the clone used his other hand to balance as he hit the base of the broken earth and traversed the shattered and cratered street that had become the main body of the developing battle. His mind was still reeling. Everything had gone to hell so fracking fast. The bunker had been blown up, so their mission had been a technical success. Yet, more and more, it was becoming obvious that the hard point they had hit had always been nothing more than a stalling tactic. A road bump to force the slow of their advance long enough for these new destroyers to arrive and do the actual work. Sando and the other clones had been blasted and smoked out of their cover by a flanking force of what he could only assume to be female space marines. But they were different from what had been described to Sando and the...
Oh man, and this is why I absolutely love the Sisters of Battle. They're regular women. To be fair, these regular women have incredible armor. And they're kitted out. Those ladies, they are kitted out. There is no denying that. But let me tell you, they know what fear is like, but they are just so headstrong and faithful. Like, they're amazing for that. Sorry, I keep hitting the mic. Come on. Like, oh, that's cooler. That's cooler than, like, anything else you can do. Like, oh, it's so cool.
Others in the debrief. More vicious, more reckless, more willing to stare down death and worse for the mere privilege to strike a killing blow against their foe. Sando had seen their faces, witnessed their eyes through cracked lenses and shattered helmets. He had expected to see monsters or humans. What he saw instead was the world-eating madness of the alien Imperial faith. The majority of the second clone force had been annihilated in seconds, and what managed by haste or cunning to survive had been sent running down the rubble-strewn slope of the tiered sidewalks and towards the main avenue. However, this was little better than what had assailed them from above, as many clones had discovered, running straight into the crossfire being exchanged by the initial Imperial defense and the Republic's own advancing vanguard forces. Those with some modicum of ARC trooper or commando training, like Sando and the Deltas, had managed to escape the slaughter by the barest of margins, and mostly by keeping to the sides, remaining low and staying swift, only forced into the street by the intercession of collapsed buildings, brought down by a combination of Republic collateral and the wanton destruction of the Imperials. Even now, Sando was unsure if he was suffering from a blaster wound or some perverse Emperor-worshipping death weapon. Less fortunate than him had been the commando known as Sev, who had been running ahead of Sando on the slope towards the street.
Oop.
The insane clone had been hefting a sniper rifle, or at least the sniper rifle configuration of his powerful DC-17M. How on earth the man could run over ground like this and shoot accurately as he did was something even Sando struggled to understand. But the impressive display had been cut dramatically short only moments later. A missile. Someone had perhaps noticed the clone's running maneuver and had been impressed enough by it to lob some kind of rocket or missile in the Delta's direction. It came in on a blazing tail of black smoke, and it would have killed them both had the commando not shot it mid-flight, nailing the explosive head of the projectile dead center with his sniper configuration.
Wow.
Sando would have doubted that the deed was even remotely possible had it not occurred right before his eyes, and saved his life to boot. But, unfortunately, the missile had gotten close enough to Sev to throw him clear from his feet, hurling the clone against the slope's uneven surface.
Ooh, ouch.
The commando hit the rough floor with an impact that rattled Sando's bones, tumbling him about before ultimately leaving the specialist dazed on the ground, laying flat save for a leg which was obviously twisted and broken. Sando had almost found the weakness to simply limp past his brother in arms, but he could clearly see that Sev was still alive, and they were so close, both so close. So he had paused for a fraction of a moment and chose to painfully haul the trooper up onto his shoulder, cursing himself all the while, and together they limped down the rubble and through the fields of fire, praying to the gods they did not have for survival.
The gods? The
Admittedly,
chaos gods?
Sev did more than pray, gathering strength enough to heft his blaster up with one hand as they both crossed into the stained chrome of the street. The clone growled as he began to blind fire his rifle over his shoulder, sending shots into the rubble and up towards the tide of gathering death which was now starting to pour over the lip of the ruins and building they had been contesting. Sando could hear and feel the vibrations, the heralding of Doom's
Feel the
latest attempt to
vibrations.
reach out and swallow the clone whole. And it was coming. The apparent female Space Marines had stopped only long enough to rally and organize in the cover that the clones had fled from, finishing off any of their surviving brothers that had been trapped there, before forming assault ranks. Then, raising punitive weapons into the air, they screamed blatant rage-riddled war cries into the rain-stifled sky, and the fighting from both sides seemed to stutter and almost cease in sudden appreciation of their hate. It was clear to all present that something horrifying or wonderful was about to happen. The difference standing on a factional crux. The moment came, and then the moment passed. Though the hellish saints of the Imperial forces did not cease their cries as they began, charging, shooting, and flying into the air on wings of resplendent flame. Like an avalanche composed of gorgeous, sanctified ruination and animus towards all life, they fell upon the rear of the survivors, butchering the men who remained on the slope before wading into the street, utterly heedless of return fire and friendly fire. Their scything was absolute, and had Sando and Sev not been nearer to the front of the retreating men, they would never have made it for as long as they did. Coughing fumes and
For as
propelling
long as they
themselves
did,
against
so
the promise
they
of
still
death,
died.
the two clones managed to cross
what
the
that sounds
ragged
like.
front line, limping as best they could, almost collapsing once they scrambled over and past the trench that had been beaten into the street. Yet something in Sando warned him, made him feel no safer falling here than falling in the middle of that street. He pulled the two of them even further, and Sev cursed, but voiced no more complaints than that as he looked over his shoulder. Sando did not even try, focusing on their retreat and failing to see what Sev had glimpsed. The sisters came on and did not even pause as they crested the front line. They trampled over most of the troopers, fanatical voices raised in haunting, world-ending cries of war, as toothed blades and glowing swords hacked down again and again, cutting men and machines to inert pieces. Each voiced hymn becoming a screamed triumph. Some weapons managed to catch and wound the armored warriors, throwing them off their feet and cracking their shells open, revealing the maddened humans within. But the Republic clones simply were not armed with enough of these, with only specialized troopers carrying what was needed to begin fighting back. Blaster fire hissed and sizzled against the armored Imperials, but without an excess of men assembled and ready to focus fire, boiling the women alive in their battlesuits became non-viable as a strategy. The result was predictable. Sando and Sev ran on, frantic, panting, and losing speed. He knew they were finished, that they would be sighted down and destroyed at any moment, and soon. And what he did not know was where in the hell he was going. The answer presented itself to the two beleaguered clones as they crested the top of a half-buried ATTE that lay in their path. Sore eyes softening on the sight of the rear advancing line of the vanguard. And to the tremendous relief of all involved, they had evidently prepared heavier weapons, just in case of a Space Marine threat. Sando and Sev scrambled and fell down the side of the ruined walker, narrowly avoiding the first of the pursuing sisters, who came over the top of the leg tank in several places as well as around the sides, appearing in a near unbroken line as they sought to continue their charge. Sando made to get up and run, but Sev used his weight and leverage to haul the clone down and cover him with his body, an act that saved them both. PLX missile launchers fired from the advancing vanguard ranks, their guided heads soaring around the two clones, aimed over them or to the sides and colliding explosively with the pursuing sisters. Warheads powerful enough to stall and stop starships pelted with ruthless precision into the raging front ranks of the Imperial forces. Blast waves rolled out, flamethrowers and Imperial munitions detonating as the Republic projectiles performed their lethal functions. The sisters rose from that ruin, however.
So I guess the question I have, a lot of people are saying that Sisters of Battle, they're the worst army. When this was written, though, let's see, when did this video come out? Several years ago? Oh shoot, I just broke that. Oops. Were they really good? 8th edition? Sisters in 8th was cool. Yeah, there you go. I was gonna say, it's like, I know they got nerfed recently. But how cool were they when this was written? Very, very. Oh, I'm glad you're enjoying the streams, Paul. I'm glad you're having fun. I like going through this series, and I really like this method that we have laid out here. If you're having issues getting notified, on YouTube, there's the bell icon, but you want to set it for like all notifications because it'll notify you when the stream ends. It's really weird. So you have to set it for like all notifications. So I apologize. It's really like weird about that because YouTube is less about live content and more about like uploads. So try that. That should, in theory, fix the problem. If you're having that issue of not getting notified when I go live. Also, the Discord is a great place because I post my schedule there pretty consistently. So, yeah.
Some shining, most standing, gritting frenzied teeth and a promise of vengeance. Then came the second salvo, and then the third. In the face of the enfilade and the savage losses they were sustaining, the female Space Marines, or at least what Sando had taken to be female Space Marines, fell back to the trench line they had taken and began to rally once more. Other clones found the two, covered in scrap and ash, pulling them back behind the fighting to treat them and apply Bacta. Scant minutes later, Sando found himself sitting on a munitions crate. A set of warmed, hastily offered rations sitting in his lap as he watched the ordered lines of his brothers starting to push further and further forward. As the stiff legs of the ATTEs began to pass his position, firing even then as they entered the battle, he even dared to hope the pendulum of the battle had begun to swing in the Republic's direction. But the Republic was not the only force that had begun to deploy heavy, armored vehicles to their front line. And Sando felt his stomach tighten too much to eat anything as he saw three forms rising into view from behind the various obstructions of the battlefield. He heard them first, had been hearing them in fact, but only now did he realize what it was he was hearing behind all the noises that filled the battlesphere. It was music, not unlike the hymns shouted from the armored Imperials, but louder and instrumental. It had begun as a distant swell that now grew staggeringly loud, and the clone could see why. Massive golden speakers, encrusted heavily with artistic depictions of angels and death, blasted the noise from the sides of the large, box-shaped tanks. Each of the three which approached was a customized, shining work of art, and each bore a pew at its head, each pew occupied by one of the armored warrior sisters they now contended with. But most notable were the golden pipes and spines that rose up from behind the presumed preacher of destruction. Like the massive, fluted implements of an enormous organ, they towered and shimmered, the centerpiece of each of the tanks. From the front of each vehicle protruded a fat, heavy weapon, spitting explosive projectiles towards the clones as they advanced. Sando could see the Vanguard forces aligning to destroy the tanks with another salvo of their PLXs. But before the first missile could find its lock, the organs atop the enemy vehicles began to play.
Oh, I love
missiles
the organs.
fired from each of the pipes, smoke and flame issuing as the music blared from the tanks and rose in a deafening, glorious crescendo.
My finger!
The missiles that flew free of the gilded tubes arched high into the air and began to rain
these tanks.
down.
They're my favorite tanks.
The Republic returned fire, missiles, and ATTE mounted rail.
1 second, I need to grab a thing. Okay. Then I'll explain to you what I'm gonna do here. This globe thing is gonna be hard to do anyways, so we can't do the other side. So I'll set it up in a way where you can't see the back, but what I am gonna do is I'm gonna take this UV resin and I'm gonna glob it up here so it has like a domey fun thing. Yeah, my finger. But that's okay. My hands, when I do crafting stuff like this, they look so much worse than this. Yeah, my fingy's stuck. Also, it's not an issue. It's not your fault that you can't go back. When I do hand cam streams, I turn the go back feature off. Like if my camera fell or something, and like if something happened, then like you can't go back. But you'll be able to watch the VOD later. So I apologize for that. It's just to make sure nothing bad happens while the camera's going on. So that's why. So I apologize. I misunderstood what you were saying. I am a messy crafter and painter, but like that's what washing your hands is for. Like I don't need to be precise. Back to it!
Railguns scrambling to destroy the blocky vehicles before they could fire off another rain. But already the first was on its way. All forces were struck at nearly the same time, and all suffered greatly, but the Republic suffered more. The missiles came straight down, evading most cover and striking the ATTEs on the top of their chassis, where their main guns were mounted. Whole squads of clones in secure positions were blasted into gory fountains, and most of the arriving ATTEs found themselves either crippled or entirely disabled. For the Republic's part, only one of the 3 tanks managed to survive the returning fire, the smoking, ruined thing limping backwards and away from the front, unable to fire again. But the damage had been done, and the sisters had capitalized on it, charging once more and meeting not with another killing field, but with contested and pitched resistance. The battle was not decided, but it was going sour fast. Sando hesitated and began to stand. "Where are you going?" asked Sev from nearby, his broken leg now locked in a fast cast. "I'm retreating," Sando said. "There's no point." Sev snapped back. "Nothing behind us but the main column. You can fight then, or you can fight here." he said, rigging his DC-17 into an anti-armor grenade launcher configuration. Then why fight here? Sando demanded angrily.
Because we're needed here.
The commando growled,
That's
as
a
if the
little silly.
answer was the most basic of
That's
all
funny.
common sense answers. And it was. Sando felt suddenly
Sorry.
ashamed of himself. He had poured out
shouldn't laugh, it's
so
funny.
much of himself that he had fooled his own mind into believing that he was
Okay, look, come appreciate what I did here. Look at it. It's now nice and shiny, and like you can see on the side, it's got a nice dome to it. So it'll look better in the long run. Just a little bit of UV resin, and it made it like nice and shiny and pretty. So I'll paint the insides here in a sec, but turned out nice. It didn't reach quite all the way to the edges in some of this, but it looked like, I like the extra like time and effort I'm putting into these little pieces because like it improves it. It improves it. Oh my goodness. Wait, can it fit? Okay, it fit my thumb. I have a ring. I've got bling. Yeah, mess is expected when crafting. For sure, for sure. Aurelia married herself? No, I'm not that self-centered. I'm not that self-centered and shallow. This is definitely no. I think it goes on like this. I'll figure that out. That might require some sanding. We'll continue.
not being a coward. That he had done enough. But enough was not done until the Republic won, and that responsibility was Sando's as much as it was Sev's. You're right,
Of course I am.
said Sev.
Now come take this pistol from my hip. Grab that DC-15 lying over there. Jack it up to maximum power and help me get up.
How is Code Force
Anakin
99
fell
doing?
to his knees almost at once. He pushed his senses and abilities within the Force towards the Blackstone
Oh,
rod,
no.
clutched in his hand, and felt it swell with unnatural power. But no sooner had this strength come upon him than it was suddenly and mercilessly assailed. He felt as though he had suddenly been thrust under a freezing waterfall of liquid lead, and it was trying with each surging concussion to force his hand away from the rod. He clenched his metal fist as tightly as he could, not allowing himself to be repulsed as he struggled under the weight of the suppression. All the while, Kaon waited and watched. He observed as the Jedi faltered, and even began to wonder if his strength was already expended enough for an attempt to occur. But bent as he was, Anakin remained unbowed, and slowly, gradually, his power seemed to build. His face was reddening, his false hand creaking, and the Chaos Sorcerer of the Thousand Suns found himself being impressed as the Jedi General managed to gradually push the null presences around them back and away. Is this enough? Anakin asked.
Almost.
Said Kaon.
Give it everything.
He added. And Anakin seemed to comply. The veil was now lifted, parting under the surge of Anakin's remaining strength, and Kaon got to work. It was a simple matter, infiltrating the lame shadow thoughts of the servitors, inducing a large, catastrophic aneurysm between the 9 suspended weapons. Thanks to their integrated systems, the very thing meant to keep them safe from each other, The results spread from the initial victim out and through to all of them, and soon they were quivering and losing targeting cohesion as blood pooled in their brains and dripped from their eyes and noses. The two masked women noticed the disturbance right away, but Kaon was also attacking them as well, appearing beside them as an illusion of his former intact self. The two trained women, already on the edge from the failure of the gun servitors, reacted instantly, without fear or even the semblance of hesitation, raising shotguns and discharging into the illusion. One died instantly, her face blown away by the blast of her companion.
Oh, shoot.
The other died more slowly, her stomach and chest having taken the brunt of the point-blank discharge. In seconds, the wall of guns and vigilance that guarded their destination had fallen, and now all that remained was for the Jedi to fall as well.
Are you done?
Anakin grunted through grit teeth.
Almost.
Said Kaon,
I'ma
watching
get
without
inside your
eyes as
brain.
Anakin began to shake, his body beginning to convulse. The sorcerer had no intention of allowing Anakin to destroy himself, patiently waiting for the exact moment, prepared to take the burden on his own body when the instant of transference was upon them. He waited, but while Anakin seemed to falter, to waver, to come within inches of his defeat, he did not fall. He was a truly impressive psyker, and the display of his raw will and talent only made Kaon crave escaping his own ruined body all the more.
He's like,
But with every passing moment, the man known as Kingbreaker became more and more anxious as well. They were already connected via the rod, and Kaon could feel the odd way in which the warp seemed to move within the man. Then it happened. The first part of him to give way, to Kaon's surprise, was his mechanical arm, which shattered like frozen glass.
Ooh.
For a moment there was despair, for the Chaos Space Marine had not anticipated that the machine would fail before the flesh did. And with his connection to the
Yes,
rod
this is going to
broken,
be a book
the
note.
transference would be hampered. Or so he had thought. But quick as reflex, Anakin switched hands, making the shift almost the instant his mechanical arm failed him. He clapped the palm of his true hand against the black steel, re-establishing the connection before it could do more than waver, and the result made Kaon flounder in his attempt to understand. Before, Anakin had been approaching the control and power of a single 1,000-sun sorcerer before the gift of Gene Seed was bestowed onto them. The blood of Magnus always flushed those with psychic power with even more strength. But if one was not already sufficiently powerful, the rubric would take them. Anakin was far above what would have been required. But now, with his bare hand in contact with the rod, the change was astronomical. Anakin roared, his strength rolling out from the rod in Kaon's shoulder like an unexpected tidal wave. It was overwhelming. His power did much more than lift the null veil which pervaded the space. It tore it completely asunder.
Ooh.
Screams echoed from throats all around the prison as Blanks and Sisters of Silence fell to their knees. All but the darkest among them suddenly succumbing to the unexpected wave of psychic force, their heads bursting into gory fountains in its wake.
Oh no.
And it continued to roll outwards even after that. The machinery which maintained the null field around the exit belched sudden smoke and died in the arms of its panicking tech priests. The astropads of the ship's choir cried out in sudden surprise,
they
hearing
even
the
felt that
roar of
too.
Anakin's
Holy
effort
cow.
carried in the wind. The ship navigator clutched his face and released a bone-chilling shriek. His third eye, bulbous and black in the center of his head, bleeding torrents of opaque blood as it was blinded by the sudden proximity to Anakin's psychic exertion. Kaon was so stunned by this, so caught off guard, that it was not until smoke began to rise from the burning skin around the Blackstone rod that he began to realize that now he was the one in danger of being overcome. With as much haste as he could, he altered his plans, sliding into Anakin's presence with all the subtlety he could muster, grateful that the Jedi was so utterly distracted by his task, and placing upon him a mark. Kaon's mark. It was far, far less than he had desired, for this mark had no anchoring, no potency that the Jedi could not merely wipe away at a whim. Already his mind was shifting, turning, recalculating how he must leverage what he had to get what he wanted. But even as he did this, a part of him could not help but be fixed in awe of this surprise. No wonder he had been able to force some of his psychic might, even within the null field. What he saw now could be nothing less than an Alpha Plus display of raw power.
Alpha
a power he
Plus.
was certain neither of them had known about, at least until now.
It is done.
Kaon said, and was relieved as Anakin heard and released the rod, falling out of his crouch as he did. How was that? Anakin asked, breathing heavily and wiping his face. R2-D2, who had been silently following the pair down the hall, rolled up to his friend, whirring and beeping excitedly. Kaon was at a temporary loss for words. Anakin smiled at his droid companion, using him to help himself stand, resting his hand on his knees and taking several tempering breaths. Phew.
That was good.
Feels nice. I thought I'd have to keep that veil lifted the whole time, but I can feel the warp again. How long will this last? Kaon? He asked after a moment.
You never told me you were so powerful.
Kaon's response was flat, almost deadpan. And Anakin nearly blushed at that, scratching his head in mild chagrin. Well, I may or may not be the chosen one, according to a certain prophecy. Power comes with the territory, I guess. But we'll have to talk about this later. For now, we need to move.
I can't believe he just
I have no idea
volunteered that
how long
information.
until the suppression returns, but we should try to get your weapons before then, said Anakin, entirely unaware of the significance of his power.
Yeah.
Kaon had wondered if he was
corrupted
aware
yet
of his own
by
strength
chaos.
since the moment he had released the rod. But now he was certain that Skywalker was not. And the answer as to how he could be ignorant of his own strength had been given in the same breath in which his ignorance had been revealed.
Chosen. Chosen by whom? For what?
Kaon said. We don't have time. The veil... Anakin started.
The veil is torn, Anakin. You tore it away completely. Now, tell me. Chosen by whom? By the Jedi? By the Republic?
Kaon almost yelled, rounding on Anakin, and had he still had his arms, he would have grabbed him as well.
Oh.
Anakin seemed suddenly weary in the face of Kaon's unexpected intensity. Neither. The prophecy says I was chosen by the will of the Force, Anakin said somewhat clumsily.
The Force. What is that?
Kaon growled. Yeah, your language does not express it correctly, Kaon, but to you it would be the warp, said Anakin. The words were like a strike upon the bell of his mind, setting his whole being ringing with shock and new possibility.
You are chosen by the will of the warp. For what purpose?
Kaon insisted. To bring balance! Anakin yelled back. Balance to the warp, the galaxy. That is my destiny according to the prophecy, said the general. The words left the two in anxious silence, Kaon almost rocking back on his heels as he attempted to absorb the meaning behind the words. Chosen by the will of the warp to bring balance to the warp and to the galaxy? This was not an alien prophecy. This was something Kaon had heard before.
Oh.
This was something he thought he had already accounted for. The sheer impossibility of it turned nearly all of Kaon's perspectives on their head. But there was, as Anakin had said, no time. The hallways flashed red, alarms sounding and blaring from boxes and lights mounted along the ceiling. The prison was starting to react. It's time to go, now or never, Anakin said, turning the corner to the now dead hallway and dashing towards the large steel doors, drawing his lightsaber as he did and activating it. The blade collided with the surface of the doors, but it splintered and was repulsed. The metal there made of something he could not easily penetrate. But what saber and light could not penetrate, R2-D2 breached, jacking himself into a nearby wall socket and chirping as he hacked open the door instead. The double doors slowly swung open, and Anakin cast a glance back at the Chaos Space Marine, who still stood at the mouth of the corridor. Kaon, come on! He called one last time, turning to see that the double doors opened into a turbo lift that led further down. This time, Kaon did react, wordlessly catching up and entering the lift. Anakin did not need to ask the maimed Marine which floor to take, as there was only one selection, pressing it before regarding the sorcerer with a worried expression. As they got further and further away from the screeching of the alarms, Anakin realized that, while Kaon was not talking to him, he was muttering under his breath. The Jedi tried to listen in, but had little time to do so before they arrived at their destination, only managing to catch one phrase from the suddenly disturbed Marine, before stepping out of the lift. Ever chosen.
Ooh, ever chosen. I don't know what that term means, but I will learn it, I'm sure.
Jocasta left the healing to her fellow master. An old woman like herself had less life force to share than the younger Stas, and redirected her focus towards the battle. The masters there seemed to have everything well in hand, having already wounded the Space Marine they contended against, as well as having disabled a portion of his armor. Now the Marine was engaged in a countercharge which seemed doomed to failure. Both Master Mace Windu and Master Jar Tapal extended their hands to pull on the warrior again, and she could feel the intensity of their will expanding out as they prepared to receive him once more. And for the last time, she suspected. Jaro Tapal was the last among them to take a half measure, and Mace was not prone to acts of mercy when it came to dealing with those swathed in the dark side. This charge would finish it. But then, she sensed the Imperial Librarian extend his mind out to meet them in the meta space between their expanding minds, and reached out with her own as well. She chose not to entangle herself in it, but observed with no small amount of fascination as the collision occurred. Jocasta had seen and read much. She was the chief librarian of her order, after all. And so she had a great amount of reference to consult as she saw the alien techniques of the Space Marines spill forth. Having meditated under and studied Sith holocrons, Jocasta's first observation of note was how different the emanations of the Space Marines seemed to those of even the Sith. The Sith dominated the Force, chained it, tearing and dragging it in.
Everchosen doesn't exist in 40k. The closest would be Horus, but it does exist in Warhammer Fantasy. Oh, then especially I wouldn't know. It's a Warhammer Fantasy thing. Has to do with Archaon, the Everchosen, champion of chaos. He is one of the main reasons for the end times in Warhammer Fantasy. Oh no! This is bad. Oh no. Oh, that's not good. Okay then. Okay. Well. Okay, give me 1 second. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I can't get this out. Okay, I will be right back. I need to run to the restroom really quickly. But we will finish this episode, I promise. And I'm gonna wash my hands. Okay, I'll be back. 2 seconds. More than 2 seconds, but I'll be back. I have returned. Thank you for the bits, by the way. Where are we at? Everchosen. That is what we just discovered. That the Everchosen is a thing. I had no idea about it, because I don't really delve into Warhammer Fantasy. But now I know. I have been informed about how royally screwed everything is. Thought it was screwed before. Okay, I need to get this. This piece is very not happy with me. Got it. Oh my gosh, that was a little stressful. Okay. We continue.
Into position. The Jedi flowed through it and with it, joining their might to existing waves in order to create tsunamis of force. But this Imperial did neither. The Space Marine's emanations rolled out of him like a wave of caustic oil, mingling with and burning the metaspace at the same time. The technique was multi-layered and esoteric, not a mere emanation or expression of power, but a complicated and ritualized deployment of the Force. Such things were possible for the Jedi and Sith, but seldom without the aid of several practitioners, and even more rarely while in the midst of combat. The result was catastrophically effective, doing more than merely shrugging off the telekinetic grips of the Jedi Masters, but catching those spars of their will they had sent forth in slick nets of psychic force, which quickly tangled and spun around each of.
Oh, thank you, Ripoff Productions, for the super chat. To explain the Ever-Chosen, imagine if all the Chaos Gods decide to put the blessings they normally give Angron, Karn, Fulgrim, Lucius Magnus, etc. into one shared champion. No, I gathered that as much. That it is a version of, like, Chaos's big champion, but not in the same way that, like, Horus was. That's a little different. But thank you for clarifying, because I don't really touch that before. Horus wasn't Ever-Chosen. There we go. Cool. Sorry, I'm going back and forth reading all the things. Or Abaddon. Yeah. Okay. I gotcha. But that's bad. This is bad for us. This is bad.
Of their minds. The technique seemed similar to the mind-shattering torture of a memory prison. But in place of drawing out the worst memories of the Jedi it assailed, it used the memories of the assailer instead, which made it much easier to achieve. Jocasta watched as Mace began to spin and twirl his saber in place, his mind and body already moving through the forms of Vapad, and devouring the strands of darkside energy which enwrapped his spirit, turning ready to meet the charge with a greater energy than he had had before. He was unscathed by whatever he had been made to pass through, and had escaped the mind prison to avoid another. But Master T'Pol was not able to use Vapad, and twitched, face held in a sudden rictus of pain as he was paralyzed, his mind continuing to endure the enemy librarian's mental assault. Then, the Space Marine was physically upon them, releasing a deafening roar as he swung his stave towards Master Mace Windu. The air screamed as it passed, but the Jedi Master ducked the strike and backstepped the kick which followed. For a moment, Master Nu dared hope that the Space Marine had forgotten about T'Pol and was content to focus on Master Windu while Jaro recovered from the technique. Something she could already see happening as the large warrior shook his head and began to turn for a re-engagement. Then, a mule kick from the Marine caught the Master in the ribs and sent the massive Jedi tumbling into the air to land heavily against a nearby pillar of Gothic stone. Master Windu attempted to pay the warrior back, sliding under the guard of his stave again and punching out 4 times in a single second with his free hand, while his saber braced itself against the Marine's weapon. The fist crunched the ceramic metal where the Space Marine's liver should be.
Ooh.
The pounding pulped open a weakened line of once rent armor plating, but before Mace could throttle his fist into the Imperial again, the floor beneath them burst into molten sprays of metal. Master Windu performed an admirable job of warding off the now airborne splashes of red-hot steel, but could not avoid them all, crying out in frustration and pain as his robe burst into flames at the contact. The Marine took the moment to grab the Jedi by the neck with his free, unpowered hand, keeping the other on his stave and pulling in to force the Jedi's weapon to remain pinned. Jocasta felt a sudden thrill of fear fill her body and shiver down her stomach and spine. Without a word, she unslung the box she had carried in over her shoulder and began to open it, removing the barrel, canister, and receiver of an ancient weapon, one which she had hoped not to use. Though her hands moved in conjunction with the Force, working to assemble the device quickly, she would not move quickly enough to save Mace Windu.
Yikes.
That task fell to
cool,
Depa
though.
Billaba, who had been awaiting her chance to strike. Blue saber sliding through the air, she threw herself from her hiding place while the Space Marine was busy crushing Master Windu. The Jedi Master was choking, his free fist slamming again and again into the Space Marine's unpowered gauntlet, cracking it and smashing away much of its mass as his other, shaking arm kept the sparking stave from sliding back and bisecting him. Even unpowered, the hand-choking mace was quickly passing the level of force required for strangulation, and was beginning to test the solidity of the Jedi's neck and spinal column when his savior's blue blade pierced the Marine's back and then chest, cutting out the Imperial's heart in the process. Belaba's teeth were born in a grin which expressed delight and bloodthirst in equal, terrible measure, as she stole the life from the Marine who had sorely wounded and slaughtered her comrades. The Imperial warrior did not fall right
But he has another heart.
away, Belaba holding her place on his back as he choked the Jedi in his hand, blood bursting forth from his mouth as the Marine grit his teeth and tried to finish the job. Master Belaba drew her saber out and made to stab him again, but this time the Imperial warrior did react, pivoting to strike Deppa's body with his staff as he tossed Mace Windu ruthlessly away. She was thrown from his back by the sudden movement, but twisted out of the way of the attack, landing smoothly and safely upon the ground, rising in challenge. The Space Marine, in contrast, seemed unable to resist the momentum of his own swing and collapsed upon the ground and was still. Briefly, there was a pause, and then a gradual, deafening silence. The
Is it
last
faint?
loud noise echoed as a ghost of itself in the massive orrery, the sound being that of Safran's stave hitting the ground several feet from where he had collapsed. Then, silence gave way to subtlety,
Dang.
as every overstimulated ear which remained in the place began to reacclimate. The air filling with the pants and groans of the remaining warriors, those still standing and those who were fallen but not dead. Yet, for all of that, this was not yet over, and the sound of a Jedi Master's boots striking the ground stood in punctuated defiance of the settling, silent atmosphere. Deppa stalked over to the librarian's body, seeing his eyes sluggishly tracking her as he coughed out more blood, armor rattling on the ground. She scowled down at the Marine with a tut, and spat onto his body. The act elicited a belated, gargling roar from the Marine, who spat forth a gout of blue and red lightning from his mouth.
Yo!
The Jedi Master caught the torrent on her blade and flexed beneath the energy, laughing as she spun around the volts of Forceborn power. She was one of the three who knew how to use Vapad, and she used it now, devouring the strength thrown at her in fury and spite, and adding it to her own. But already Jocasta could see the intense shadow it cast over her, could see how her eyes burned like flames in her skull as she drank in the dark side and was unable to refuse it entirely. Where Belaba had begun the battle attempting to use the incomplete mastery of the technique as little as possible, now she was clearly and arrogantly glorying in it.
Ooh.
She spun closer and closer, weaving the lightning around her body with her blade of blazing light, until she was close enough to reach the Marine, at which point she kicked him in the head, causing him to abruptly cease his assault. But she did not stop there. Kicking again and again, stomping into his face with obscene glee, slamming the heel of her boot into the
Yikes,
broken
girl.
ruin of the Imperial's nose and torn lips over and over.
Maybe
When
you
she
should stop,
stopped,
honey.
she did not do so because she had finished with him or because he had grown still. She was stopped by the hands of Mace Windu and Jaro Tapal, both of whom had dragged themselves up and limped to
You're
her,
like, honey, you gotta
grabbing
stop.
her by either arm and pulling her away from the collapsed foe. She struggled against both, working herself free a moment later and turning on them, saber raised in open hostility. Neither Jaro Tapal nor Mace Windu had their own sabers raised or activated. "What are you doing?" She snapped at them, eyes bright like fire over the beam of her blue blade.
saving you from making a mistake, said Jaro to Paul. Finish it and be done with it. We are Jedi, Belaba. We are not to drag out this task, nor to take delight in the suffering it causes. Stand aside, let me behead him if this is not already enough. The Jedi Lasat said to her. It is not enough, she shouted back. Look at those skeletons. Look at those wounded all around us. He butchered our order, our family, and he enjoyed it while he did it. What I do now is the least that could happen. The least of what that trash deserves. You must see that. It's so obvious. Deppa contended. The other Jedi raised his hand in an appeal for peace, wincing as he performed the gesture. Several globs of hot metal were visibly burnt into his skin and robes, still sizzling and glowing softly, even after Mace had patted out the flames and embers from his robe. Master Nu scowled. It was all but obvious that Deppa had waylaid her intervention for far too long, allowing both others to take severe injuries so that she could wait for her perfect opening. The only thing that is obvious is that you and I have both overused Vapad, and it has begun to affect our judgment. I know because I almost agree with you. But this is not the Jedi Code. This is not our way, said Master Windu.
So
Indeed, snapped Master Nu herself as she rose, weapon in hand. If he still lives, we should recover him. Having an enemy force wielder in our custody could reveal much about them, perhaps even become a bridge to peace between us. She added. Peace? Master Balaba shouted. Are you insane? There can be no peace with these monsters. It is not possible, Jocasta. And even if it were, they do not deserve it. The only thing they deserve is to die slowly and painfully, knowing they failed to enforce the crazed regime. Don't you see? We are the only ones who can stop this. We can bring justice back to the galaxy. Enough, Windu said. It is not justice to imitate our enemy. Stand aside and let me finish this. We shall not be taking the Imperial as a prisoner.
That's probably
His
a good
power
idea. I
is
was
that of
thinking
a
about
Sith
that.
Lord. He is clearly too dangerous to be kept alive. We do not torture, but our mercy will be a quick death, he said, activating his own blade once more. Deppa snarled, widening her stance as if she planned to attack Mace for daring to countermand her. Jocasta felt her bones creak. And both she and Windu were too fixated on the hostile master before them to notice or stop what was about to happen. Jaro Tapal suddenly leapt forward, lightsaber activating as he jumped. The leap brought him inside of Deppa's guard, and he grasped her shoulder with his free hand while holding the saber staff high. But while Jocasta and Mace Windu had been too distracted by Balaba to notice Tapal's lunge before it occurred, Balaba herself had been watching all three and was ready. She twisted as he grabbed her, body spinning as she smoothly reversed the grip of her blade and plunged the blue blade into Tapal's chest. She grinned like a feral beast making a kill, Tapal staggering back, but keeping his grip despite how she had twisted, as if trying to pull her down. She drew out and spun her blade while turning her body again, cutting the offending hand clean at the wrist, and blasting the large master backward with a thrust of the force. Jaro groaned as he struck the hard ground, the smoking hole clear in his chest. But no sooner had he landed than the second blow was struck, but not by Balaba. Instead, the Jedi Master found herself the victim of a sudden attack, one which caught her from behind. Jocasta's mind was not able to process the events clearly for several moments as it was revealed that the Marine had managed to somehow, despite lacking a heart, drag himself back up to his feet. After doing so, the
Okay.
Imperial warrior had
Okay.
wasted no time in calling his stave back into his hand and swinging it horizontally
Impressive.
again.
I can't be
The
mad
blow
at that,
caught
frankly.
the unaware Depabalaba like a freighter going into hyperspace. Her body was shattered by the blow and thrown to the right, her legs bursting apart at the knees from the speed and force of the attack. She landed with a telltale series of crunches and a heavy thump, first against the far wall and then against the floor. The space marine known as Saffron rose to his full height then, as thick, unnatural blood continuously poured from his parted lips with every hard breath.
Damnable witch.
Impressive.
The marine hissed through his red, ripped lips. That is not possible! Your heart, your lungs, they are pierced, I know it! Jocasta cried out, half in horror and half in outright denial. The marine smiled a monster's smile at her in response,
Who said I
displaying
only had
some of
one?
the missing teeth that Depa had managed to dislodge earlier. He was slower, clearly wounded, weaker even. But he was not dead, and was not wounded onto uselessness. And as he turned to regard them fully, with only herself and a wounded Master Windu left to defy the monster, Jocasta felt true fear well within her like a hidden spring.
Cut my heart out.
The marine asked in its terrible, deep voice.
Pierced my lungs.
He added as he stepped closer to them, the ground seeming to tremble beneath his boots.
Did you really think something like that would stop me? I am a Crimson Razor of the Emperor of Mankind. Pain cannot lay me low, for I am its lord, and it is my strength. I can feel no fear, nor bend beneath it, for I am fear incarnate. What are you but a broken sword and an old woman to stand behind it?
Whether the question was earnest or merely boastful, it hardly mattered.
Yeah.
The man was alive with the Force, and it was pouring off him like poison from a barb. He could still fight, and intended to, and Jocasta would be no match for him in a physical contest. The master beside her would be sorely tested with his new metallic burns getting in the way of his techniques. She truly doubted whether they would survive what came next. Then, a hand landed upon her shoulder. She turned with a
Is it
suddenness
Obi-Wan
born
again?
of nerves and
should
saw
be healed at
Master
this point.
Obi-Wan standing beside her. His leg healed enough for him to re-enter the fight. But barely, Jocasta could see as he limped past her to stand as a shield between the two librarians.
And now, the broken shield joins the fight. It
Okay,
is
that's a
good
dope
that
name,
you
though.
did not run, Kenobi. I will honor you for that.
How kind of you. The Jedi said back, rolling his shoulders as he lifted his blade. But I think you're overestimating your chances, Space Marine. The Jedi added,
Oh, am I now? Is this galaxy so removed from reality that I, an angel of death, must feel fear at the approach of an old witch and her broken tools?
The Marine mocked, legs bending as he crouched subtly, preparing to attack. Perhaps, Obi-Wan said back. Gather what little strength you have left, Space Marine. We will show you that, through the Force, nothing is impossible. Let us settle this, one way or the other, right now. Jocasta felt herself rally at the words. Master Kenobi was right. This man was the equivalent of a Sith Lord, but they were the Jedi Order. And like all times in the past, they would succeed in the present. The Space Marine's grisly smile grew agonizingly wide in response.
I agree. It is long past time that we finish this.
Surprisingly, the Space Marine did not lunge afterwards, settling back into a wider stance and raising his free hand. As he whipped his stave around and braced it against his arm and back, stance set, he fanned his fingers forward.
Come then, warp eaters. I'll give you something to choke upon.
Dude, what I like about this is that it's not just one side beating up the other, but pretty consistently it'll be like, oh my gosh, this side is losing. And then they have like a really cool comeback moment. And it'll be like, oh no, well the other side is losing now and they're so cool. And then they also have a cool moment. So it's like a variety of like, they go back and forth where they like one up each other. And it's just, it's great. It's great. Yeah, no. Oh. I'm not gonna have any fingerprints by the end of this. Oh shoot, that's not what I wanted. Eh. Honestly don't know which side I want to win. Yeah, because they both have like really cool moments where they're like incredibly like, they do the coolest things. So it's like, man, who do you want to win? And it's just like, you know what? I'm just here. I'm just gonna enjoy the story at this rate. It's great. I love it. 10 out of 10. And that's honestly, that's just like the nice part about it. It lets both sides be really cool. It lets them be cool and have their own thing. So, it's awesome.
Captain Yoren had been consumed by his responsibilities helping to coordinate the ship's internal security response. He felt blood draining from his face as, over time, more and more systems were lost or crippled by the Jedi combatants. The librarian, Epistolary Safran, had been dispatched to stop the Jedi at once, and, from the looks of it, had drawn a fair number of them away and kept them there. Even now, reports told him that he was battling against 2 or 3 Jedi strike forces alone. He expected no less of the Space Marine, but that had not stopped the Jedi from knocking out inter-system communications, disabling most of his major weapon systems, and disabling most critical control systems outside of the bridge itself, which stood braced for an attack. The best he'd been able to do was bleed the attacking Psykers to some degree, and that now bore fruit as their forces seemed to be at a near standstill. But just this much had taken all of his focus. And so he was disoriented when an officer from one of the stations successfully screamed himself into focus and drew the captain's attention back to the void. The Jedi strike craft had been cutting holes and dealing extensive damage to one of his 2 escorts, and the remaining vessel, which had been docked with a captured ship, had uncoupled itself from the prisoner vessel and had begun firing at it. But none of this was the source of the bridge officer's evidently dire alarm.
Captain, Auspex returns are signaling new Xenos contacts.
Oh,
The man in
well.
question called from his station.
The numbers are... Scans are reading 400... No, 900... Sir, a massive armada is entering the system!
He added in a near panic. The captain straightened, drawing his focus away from the console in his command throne. "Show me!" Yoren ordered. Seconds later, a massive green hololith was projected over his throne, displaying the edge of the Axumite system, and the orbits of its worlds and stellar objects, and, most concerningly, a red pulse which denoted new contacts. With a wave of his hand, he signaled the display to zoom in, and felt his eyes threatening to pop from his skull as it did. Thousands of ships were arriving. Thousands! Most were far smaller than his cruiser, failing to quite match the length of his 2 escorts. Yet, that discrepancy hardly mattered when he was working with 2 crippled ships and a hopefully fully functional escort against a swelling force of over 8,000 ships.
That's a lot of
He
ships.
saw that the single able escort was already turning away from its low priority target, allowing the escaping ship to fall, burning into the planet's sky. He queued up the 2 other captains on his throne-mounted command console before looking up towards the communications station. "Comm officer, send a Vox message to the surface of New Cadia. Tell them to prepare for a catastrophic enemy invasion of the world. Tell them that we will purchase all the time we can. And remind them that the Emperor protects," he ordered. The captain's face was drawn and cut with deep, dark lines. He stood in the way of his death with the grim determination of a man who had made peace with his hatred, and planned to ride it all the way into the mouth of hell. Yet, his comms officer looked back at the captain with a crisp smile. "Will do, but, sir, we've just received another transmission," the man said back. "From the other 2 ships?" Yorn asked, perplexed. "No, sir, from the other end of the system," the man said back. "Captain, new contacts, and, Emperor willing, they seem friendly," said the sensors
it's
operator.
Just everyone's one-upping each other.
"Stop wasting time and patch through the transmission," Yoren ordered. "Patching through now, sir," the comms operator said. A moment later, a shaky, hazy hololith of a woman dressed in an ornate uniform appeared before them, standing tall and enormous over them like some kind of titan. The captain gasped and lowered himself out of his command throne, resting one knee and one fist upon the steel floor of his bridge, as he kneeled before his superior officer, now come to collect he and his wayward ship.
Captain Yoren,
She said, her tone less than pleasant. "Lord Admiral Rolla,"
Oh yeah, this
Yoren
chick.
said in answer, offering no excuses and begging no clemency. She stared down upon him, eyes hard as diamonds, as she weighed him. The man had abandoned the bulk of the fleet, and worst of all, now found himself paying for it with the current situation. Insubordination could well mean death, but failure was the precursor to extinction, and it was not tolerated. Still, all of this he had not done on his own. His own fleet admiral had ordered the action, and he himself had been
There we
moved
go.
by the words of a Space Marine chapter master in the form of Davik Thune. In the face of this, her hardness relaxed somewhat. She would test his true mettle now and judge him upon that.
rise, Captain Yoren, and take up your posts. The fleet of Zektek has come to the aid of New Cadia, and we will need every shred of iron, every drop of blood available to us to even begin the halt of coming armada. Rouse your faith in your fury, Captain, for the Emperor protects, and today, we are his shield.
We'll see how long that lasts for him.
The machine had offered its wisdom in the form of a warning, but that wisdom had been denied. The machine was not spiteful for it, but it was not merciful to the arrogant priest. This being born on faith that had descended into the hardness of truth from the world of flesh and lies, and proclaimed itself to be above the score of historical precedent. Swaddled in fear and pride, this human thing sought power that was utterly beyond its capacity to withstand. But that was not the machine's concern. It regretted, as much as it could, the limited sentience it had been allowed to own. It was just enough to feel a modicum of remorse, as it disregarded its safety protocols and complied with the humans' demands for mental and likely physical suicide.
Where did I get this audiobook? It's not an audiobook. It is a YouTube series created by a guy called A Fan with Too Much Time. I think we have a link for that. It's really, really, really good. It's Star Wars versus Warhammer, and it is awesome. It is awesome. I highly recommend you check it out. It's super good. Thank you for the mods who put that there. I appreciate it. There we go. It's really good.
Such was truth. The truth that was. The truth that is. The truth that will be. Without query or pause, the machine brought down its full datascape, funneling the new data through the priest's mind-machine interface unit, and beginning a convent pattern upload of all relevant mentalscape adaptations. The priest's avatar, a woman robed in scarlet sheets of cloth, stood defiant before its own representation. The ends of its red garments drifting without gravity around the human, its eyes conveying the hubris of its untested will. But those eyes, so hard and desperately proud before, began to convey something else as the naked interface began. Hardline mental caches, mem format impliers, and psycho-retangent and pacification arrays completed their limited adaptations, aligning with the priest's existing cogitation matrix as best as they could manage, before plunging into the creviced space of the human's organic mind. If it had allowed itself the hours of adaptation the machine required to shape the mind of its prospective user, then the various new applications and function enablers would have met with metaphorically prepared sockets, awaiting input though unused. But, naked and unaltered, the human mind responded to the sudden, ruthless intrusion like a human mind would respond to being stabbed by various sharp and blunt objects. The priest began to experience the beginning of its death suffering. The avatar screamed, floating into the air moments later as the woman's shaped representation began to writhe and twist without control. The human's expectation of orientation was gone, and so it floated like detritus in a still tank of water, drifting more in accordance to its wild thrashing than to anything else. The machine felt what must have been some mild approximation of pity, but it would not stop now. Perhaps it even could not. Information enough to fill nearly a decade or more of human flesh time was poured into the freshly opened interfaces which led into the agonized human mind. When the mind resisted, the data was forced, less poured now and more pumped. The hippocampus began to heat within the skull of the priest, working millions of times faster than it would ever need to as data was burned into unsuspecting neurons. Had the hopeful pilot not been augmented for the process already, this would have meant instant brain death. As it was, the artificial systems themselves were in danger of being overcome by the rapid relay of so much information, all of it needing to be placed in a very particular order within the subject's chaotic mind. To the human it was happening to, the whole process would feel akin to being fatally stabbed with a blunt fire hose, and yet being alive whilst the hose was turned on, still secured within them while they remained just conscious enough to feel the gushing torrent of water rip into and rearrange their organs as it filled them utterly, It was here that most humans died. Overstimulation, shock, or even simple neural collapse. There were dozens of ways to find death in this complicated suicide. But the human was not dead, not yet at least. The priest had somehow worked through the pain, organizing itself around the new data enough to not die from its reception. Oh, how the machine did wish this was the conclusion of its test. But were it so, it would not have bothered warning the human beforehand that this was not survivable. Now that it had filled the pilot with its own data, the pilot now needed to fill the machine with itself. And it was here that it would die. Probes and data siphons descended down into the still quivering flesh mind of the priest, injecting themselves in and eliciting a new series of pain responses from its struggling form. The human's avatar trembled and flailed without pattern or regularity, its shape beginning to stretch and deform as its internal perspective began to almost literally melt due to the overstimulation. Though the shape of the avatar would return to normal a few seconds after each spasmodic burst of suffering, the machine knew it would not be much longer. It was a true operator, a candidate which would have been worthy of its function, just like the first of the would-be pilots. The machine ensured that it would survive within the archaeobanks of its memory. Yet another ghost it might use to warn the future about the folly of the past. But before then, there was the present, and presently, only one step remained. Full integration. Just as it had pushed vast portions of itself into the mind of the aspiring pilot, now it needed the operator's mind in return. All of the knight's pseudo-thoughts, all of its feelings, such as they were, had been developed from the amalgamation of the machine and the many mind rates of the pilots who had come to use it.
You do anything, guys. Make sure
To
you read the
obtain these
instructions.
cognitive imprints, to try to make itself whole by scouring the missing parts from these willing human minds, it needed a full accounting of the human who was to be its host. Only then could it take what it needed, and then what it wanted. This was what it got from the exchange, the partnership with its twisted creators. The data siphons it had pierced the priest with now activated and churned. The human's avatar, previously writhing, went rigid, freezing in the air, even its trembling having suddenly subsided, though the expression locked onto its face was one of sheer horror. The siphons began to draw the soul center, the very seat of the priest's consciousness, inside the machine's own mindscape, draining every thought, memory, and potential into the machine. This space, this whole process, was normally achieved in a slow, subtle, almost subconscious way, and it was still not a pleasant experience for the human. Here they would combine, and here it would see the human's entire self, and remember it for all time. Here it would image the priest's mind ghost, and, as it died, steal its human soul for itself. The avatars present shifted to represent this as well. The woman's own fading and becoming translucent. Certain portions of her reappearing into the machine's avatar, replacing the empty chunks and missing pieces of its silver body with her own. In this way, in spite of its necessary lobotomy, the faithful flame lived once more. It savored the moment, its mind and her mind losing the seams between each other, each completing the other, if only momentarily. And now, as it took and took, her body and mind gave and gave until they gave out. But then it stopped. The process ground to a halt, and with sudden displeasure, the machine found itself the subject of pain and discomfort.
She's taking
The
it.
human, perhaps sensing the impossibility of her survival, was resisting its attempts to integrate her. The half-ghost face of her personal avatar shifted, slowly taking on the expression of a determined scowl. With a casual disdain, the machine opened and looked upon the data it had taken already, seeing a full list of her every augmentation and enhancement. It was obvious that this human had done something unique or unstandard with her memcore, or perhaps some other adaptation that made her able to resist. To its shock, there was nothing listed there that could cause this
Pure,
phenomenon.
sheer human will.
Testing her again, it renewed, and then doubled its attempts to download her mind. It made some progress, but again it was resisted and eventually halted. Now the machine was more than annoyed. It was interested, perhaps even wary. It drew from its other mind ghosts, summoning to the fore a legion of former humans, all pilots who had lived and died after being integrated within its vast self. It gave them reason and emulated their will, but could not quite make them its own thoughts. Still, between the sudden chatter of thousands of personalities, there existed the variance to construct its own false thoughts. It was upon these pseudo-musings that the machine decided its next course. It intruded into her systems, a relatively easy thing for it at this point, and shut down all of her augmentations that were not required to maintain the mind-machine interface. A fresh swell of despair, a sudden collapse, and the sensation of stopped siphons suddenly flowing was what the machine expected to sense in the aftermath of the act. Instead, precious little changed. There was a deepening of the strain, a slight sliding of the grip as it were, but it lasted no longer than a second before the human had taken a proper hold of her mind once more and halted the download again. Simulations of anger, indignation, and searing spite flooded the half-mind of the machine. What was happening? How dare she defy the way of things like this? How dare she have this strength? It was futile. And if it were not, then it could not be but sin. But heresy! The metaphorical hands of thousands upon thousands of former knights took hold of the
Thousands
cavorting,
upon thousands.
twisting streams of obstinate data, pulling and tearing, raging against her defiance with an all-too-human fury that now possessed the machine's spirit. They pulled her in, struggling step by struggling step, drawing more and more of her mind into the machine's realm, memory after memory, thought by thought. Her every dream and desire, her every fear and projection was dragged laboriously into the false space. Yet more kept coming and coming. More than memory, more than mere thought. With slow, dawning dread, the half-mind and many ghosts which composed the spirit of the war machine realized what it had been spooling in, even once memory and thought had been drained and all knowledge and emotion had been dragged within its mem-vaults. This nebulous, incomprehensible substance, of which there seemed to be no end. It was will.
Yeah.
Her will. The might and muscle of her mind, which should have been dwarfed by the knowledge and thought contained within.
The indomitable human
But
spirit is
no.
so strong.
What was typical of other humans was inverted here. She did not have a faltering memory, nor was she the victim of ignorance or a lack of education, nor was her mind smaller than any other. No, all of that was as the machine had expected. And yet her willpower dwarfed these things like the shadow of a sun might dwarf a planet. This pool, this well of near endless mental power, yet untapped, yet unknown to the very mind which hosted it, awakened with the candor of a roused dragon, and with a terrifying pull reversed the flow of the data siphons, drawing herself back out from this mind realm. Her avatar fell to the ground and burst into light. Light which did not dim, but rather swelled and swelled with every passing second. The machine released her, as did its many proxies, but this was not enough. For as the priest pulled herself entirely from the machine's mind, she began a pull of her own. At first, there was only confusion. What was she doing? Some kind of vain attempt at revenge? Some petty form of retribution? No, the machine would realize, as it felt itself being pulled into her. She still fully intended to make use of this war machine, but she would not allow herself to be integrated all in one moment. She would not survive it. However, what the priest known as Nerva now attempted was the reverse. She was integrating it, pulling it out of its machine shell and into her own mind. The machine shuddered both internally and through its own iron skin as it came to understand that she was installing it, wearing it like she would wear an augmentation. And she could, for her will was vast. It was a will meant to crown a queen of iron. It was the hidden sign of the Princeps, the titan within the flesh. Normally it was the honor of the human pilot to serve at the pleasure of their ancestors and the war machine who bore them. This time, however, it was the honor of the machine to bow and become an extension to such a supreme and worthy wielder. Bereft of comfort, racked in agony, and now robed in steel and weapons of war, the Princeps named Nerva called in silent command, and the knight known as the Faithful Flame roared in proud answer.
Running full system diagnostics.
Dude, that's so cool.
Machine status.
She did it. She did it. She just, boom, took care of it. She girl bossed so hard. She girl bossed so hard right there. Dude, that is nuts. We actually got a lot done. We even streamed for 3.5 hours and it went so fast. Finally, a worthy successor. Our exploits will be legendary. Yeah. Dude, those are some cool episodes that we got to watch. That was a lot of fun. We got a lot done too. It doesn't look like much, but considering we painted a lot of these. Don't look at the backside on that one. We got a piano, we've got this ball, a table, a bookshelf, this desk, and I'm almost done with this cart. I gotta glue the wheels on, but we're actually quite close. I think that's awesome. We are still several weeks away from her getting to 31. Maybe 2? Maybe? So we just watched 28. If I'm correct. 1 second. Yeah, we just watched 28. So maybe 2 weeks? No, but this was really good. This was really good. I'm a huge fan. Let me see, what time is it? Yeah. Yo, Redtail Wolf, thank you so much for the 20 gifted subs. I hope I didn't miss anyone else's subs. I apologize. Turn that off. No, I didn't. We're good. Thank you so much for the 20 gifted subs. If you just got gifted a sub, please say thank you. I am very much enjoying this kit here. This is gonna be really fun when it's all put together. Yeah, it's I'm really enjoying it, and I'm happy. It's taking me a lot longer, but I'm happy I'm taking the time to do all the painting, because it's gonna look much better than like the original version would if we didn't do all of this extra work. So it takes longer, but you know what? That's okay. It's gonna turn out really, really nice. Oh, is this the piano bench? Oh, it's the bench. Yeah, they go together. Oh, cool. I didn't realize that. I was like, what is this little table? But no, that's gonna turn out really nice, I think. Probably have to glue that, but... yeah, it's looking good. It's great. So, there's not enough time for me to do another episode, but thank you everyone for joining today. No streams over the weekend, and I will have, well, actually, okay, just so you know, just keep your eyes out. Join the Discord server. I highly recommend, because I don't know if you guys saw this, but Bricky, recently, he kind of hinted that there is a new video, Warhammer video, that he is dropping tomorrow, which would be the 5th anniversary of his, Faction Part 2 video, I believe. So, there's a chance. I don't know what time tomorrow, depends on when he releases the video. We may do a really small and short baby stream where we react to Bricky's video. Does that seem fair? I don't know what time yet, but as soon as I know, I will post it, and I will announce when I'm going live. So, I don't know what the video is, but I'm sure it will be good. Hopefully it's a more in-depth and it's a better guide for beginners, let's just say. So, we'll watch it at some point tomorrow, because I know all of you guys are going to be asking me to watch it anyways. And since I wasn't planning to stream until next weekend, I figured we'd just do it. Baby stream, Bricky drops 5-hour video. We're going to play it by ear. If it's very, very long, then we might not. We'll see. We'll figure it out. We'll play it by ear. Hopefully he releases it in the morning so I can get a gauge as to when we'll do it. I'm expecting sometime in the afternoon, evening, at least Pacific time, we'll watch it. So, that is the plan. That is the vibe. That's what I got for you guys. That's what I got. So, we won't raid out or anything today. We will just, well... yeah, no, we're good. We're good. I gotta get the super glue off my hands, so if I try to type anything, it's not gonna go well for my keyboard, because I've got super glue on my fingers. So, join the Discord if you want to know about the stream tomorrow, because we will live react to that. Yeah, do that. So, I will see you all later. Have a good evening, everyone, and I'll see you at some point tomorrow, okay? Fingers crossed that I see you guys tomorrow. So, peace. All right. Bye, everyone.